procedures during our workshop next Monday. So it'd be nice to at least have a quick look through of this. And then if there's time after that, we can look through the administrative procedures handbook and then look at the governor's proposal and just kind of review a plan for review of policies.
Right. Okay, so the agenda is school board procedures, review of policies, administrative procedures, governor's proposal, and other issues. We only have an hour. We're starting with school board procedures, and we'll go as far as we can. So,
is this draft what you've been using so far?
Well, for several years, we would have school board procedures as part of another handbook, but it was always so awkward in that other handbook, and so I pulled them out one year thinking that we'll just have our own standalone document. So some of them have been used in the past, and then it's kind of reinvigorated. Does that make sense? Or okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So you want me to just kind of go through it almost page by page, or hit the highlights maybe?
Because they're a new committee, I think they need to get used to what they want to do here. So probably need to go over it page by page.
Sure. And so in all of our handbooks, we have a table of contents. And so that's always the second page after the title page. And then the very next document after that is kind of a non-discrimination section. And so I've included that in all of our handbooks. So every time we're looking at something, the information's right there. So under the non-discrimination section, it's worse, or it's not as bad as it sounds. So I apologize for the coughing.
Well, if it gets to be too much, Carson, we can meet another time or something. So just don't go. Sure. You got another meeting ahead of you here. So
that's right.
I think everybody's okay with that if we need to do that.
Now let's give it a shot. What's that, Anna?
One of us could go through and just, read it or something. And then, you could pop in with details if you want.
Oh, yeah, that could be a good idea. Maybe I'll just do this non-discrimination part, and then maybe all of us can take turns or something.
Sure.
So this section you'll see in every handbook, and it lists the ADA and Section 504 coordinators. We've chosen to have a coordinator and an alternate. A lot of schools don't, but we've chosen to do that, which is really nice in case somebody's not there, or they can team up on particular issues. We also have a Title IX coordinator. We identify it as Jess Whitcomb. And then again, Amy French is a human resources person, so she's the alternate. And then we have the two human rights officers, Jess and Amy. So the human rights officers would tackle things like if there's a racially motivated bullying incident, then the people at a particular building should complete the report, and then they can go ahead and investigate, make some decisions, but then that should be routed through Jess and/or Amy just for review. So usually in a given year, that's usually the biggest responsibility out of those three areas. This year, though, we've had a lot of people with the ADA plan requests. So those would be the accommodations for different working environments and that kind of thing. So this year it's been really busy with that. Yeah, Article 2 is the norms of operation. Anna, do you want to just briefly kind of highlight what's there?
Sure. So positive relationships, basically just maintaining a good positive working relationship, quality interaction, that conflict is natural and inevitable, but that we will be accountable for our own actions, be receptive to others, focus on issues, not people, work in supportive ways, and address concerns directly with people involved. Collaborative decision making. So making decisions with equity as a primary priority, defining the objective, provide opportunity for input, gather all pertinent facts, allow time for reflection, organize and analyze data, encourage the consideration of multiple solutions and their implications, encourage compromise and seek consensus, make a timely decision, provide a written implementation plan, communicate the decision to those affected, support the decision and its effective implementation, and evaluate the decision in terms of its effectiveness. And so just for my own clarification, like this section, this is just kind of generally how the board operates, right? But the board doesn't necessarily do all of these things, right? So like when we're collecting data, like we aren't the ones who are calling, you know, parents who have left the district to find out why, but we are involved in the asking for that to happen and then the follow-up and that type of thing.
Yep, correct. Yep, that's well said.
Right. Can I ask Carson, is there any changes in what we had in the past, or is this a new document, or what all we got here?
Well, maybe I'll give a little context. My first or second year here, we received a grant for the administrative team to work with a gentleman named Ted Blazing, who's a former superintendent of White Bear Lake Schools, just an unbelievably good person and superintendent. And so we had a 2-day workshop with Ted, and this is one of the activities that we did as an administrative team. We came up with these norms of operation for the school board and for the administrative team. And so they may have changed a little bit here and there since that time, but they're essentially those norms.
So this is all what we've had the past couple of years. I'm just wondering if you've got any, there's no red line here or anything, if there's any real changes from there, or if we're just going over it and seeing if we think something would be changed.
Yeah, there's no red line here because I had taken all the school board stuff out of the other handbook. And so then I created a new handbook, and so there isn't something to compare it with. That makes sense. But the important part of your question though is, yeah, this is essentially what we've been following for the past decade or so.
All right.
So then continuing on, there's continuous improvement. Committed to an ethic of continuous improvement. So we will regularly examine our progress towards goals, annually review and evaluate and establish district goals, evaluate the superintendent, conduct self-evaluation, complete phase 1 through 4 training sessions by the MSBA, and participate in at least 2 other learning sessions sponsored by MSBA.
All right.
Sorry.
There's an item that was here before, and now I'm looking at item 2 or item 3 here, annually evaluate the superintendent. Now we have changed to a twice a year system.
Oh, yes.
So I'm wondering if you want to just basically leave it the same and say at least annually.
There you go. I can do that.
Is that making any sense?
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't lock us in then if we change. And then accountability, the board recognizes it's accountable to the community and other stakeholders. We will communicate the state of the district, conduct open, transparent, frequent communications, and encourage public engagement. When does that state of the district occur? I should know this, but I don't.
Well, that's terminology that Ted Blazing used.
Okay.
Probably the closest thing that we do is the World's Best Workforce Report that's issued in December.
Okay.
So Jess Whitcomb kind of leads that effort, but a lot of people contribute to it. So that'd be the closest thing that we have is the state of the district.
Okay. And is that like made publicly available to the community or?
Yes. Yep. And it should be on our website.
Okay.
I'd have to look for the actual link.
Right, we are required by law to do that world's best workforce report annually, and that's done at the board meeting, so it is available to the public because of that.
Okay.
Definitely.
I think I saw that then watching board meetings, just didn't know that that was what that was.
I think it's a strange name, world's best workforce, and really it's not what it's about. It's,
Yeah, it seemed when I saw that or like heard that as a title, it made me think that like, oh, this is like about personnel stuff. Like I don't need to, I don't know, it just didn't seem as relevant to what I was at the time.
Yeah, and I can't remember the governor who brought in the world's best workforce. Probably Dayton, but I guess I don't remember for sure. And so, the world's best workforce report was supposed to replace a whole bunch of different reports. Everything would be reported through one vehicle called, the World's Best Workforce Report. It has not turned out that way, unfortunately. So we still have just as many reports, and even more confusing than ever. I will point out 2 or 3 changes under continuous improvement. I think this would be different than what we've had in the past, but item number 4 is annually conduct a self-evaluation of board operations. So we did that last year, and I don't know if the board will want to keep doing that. So on Monday, we'll probably want to review that together to see if it's something that we want to commit to. And Arlen, what was your feeling on the last self-evaluation that MSBA did?
well, I don't know if it really solved anything.
Sure. Was it worth a discussion?
There's been a lot of tension on the board for the last probably 2 years. And we had a facilitator, and I don't know, it's too early to tell what the results of it really are, because that was pretty much done just last fall.
Yeah. And of course,
then
now we have
virtually too, because everybody thinks it's a good idea, and I think so too, that we should continue to do evaluations on an annual basis. I think that's good.
Yeah, so that might be one issue. And then the last 2 items there, as far as completing the training and participating in 2 other learning sessions each year. I think that's doable, but I guess I don't know in terms of schedules and other commitments.
I think I've only completed phase 1 training.
Really?
I think Nikki
I've only done the required is all I've done, I believe.
I think Nikki, Jennifer, and I did levels 1 and 2, but I don't think I've seen anything about a 3 and 4.
That could be. They usually come out in phases. Yeah, and that's just kind of a one-time deal for each board member. So I purposely didn't say each year or within the first year, just because I think we need to leave it open. So eventually, hopefully, everyone will go through those trainings. But again, that might be too much to ask. So on Monday night, we can certainly hash that over. You ready for the next section?
And then you also got at least 2 other learning sessions sponsored by MSBA. That's putting even more on.
Yeah. So again, we'll have to make sure that all that board members want to make that commitment. They do have a lot of different one-day sessions that are pretty easy to go through, and the January session. I know I saw Anna in the virtual session, and Arlen, I know you were there too. So I mean those are pretty substantial days.
Mm-hmm. I think if 1 through 4 are one-time deals, then it would make sense to, like if I get through 1 through 4 this year, then like next year to take 2. So maybe there's some wording that we can change in there. So like when it's your first year, you're not taking 6 training sessions. Because I know that like phase 2 was 2 days, I think. And I think phase 1 might have been 2 days as well.
Yeah, that's
So,
a pretty
you know,
big commitment.
yeah. And they were, several hours at a time. So, but maybe there's a way to word that, like in your first year, take at least this many, your second year, take at least this many, but then, years 3 and 4, continue to take additional ones. I mean, it could be worded somehow. So that it doesn't, like right now, I think the way that it's worded, the implication is that right now I should take 6 training sessions.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Year, and that's maybe a little much. Maybe
Yeah.
I actually will, because I did that conference in January, but
We, there's a required training, I'm not sure, I was thinking of just phase 1, maybe it's 1 and 2, whatever it is. But anything beyond that is, I don't know, we're making us say you have to do this if you're on a board. I think maybe we need to word encourage completion of phase 1 through 4, or whatever it is, the extra ones. Encourage participation at least, but to say you have to do that, I don't personally feel that's right for us to tell a board member they have to do all these other things in order to be on the board, because they don't legally have to.
Yeah, there's really no consequence if that isn't followed. Yeah, I think we could reword that. We could use encourage and somehow reword it. Yeah, that's good feedback. Should we jump to the evaluation part?
yes.
Yeah, we're jumping.
So here we have the tentative deadlines for completing my evaluation. We chose to follow MSBA best practices, which now calls for 2 evaluations each year. And so we've kind of gone around and around about which one's the mid-year, which one's the end of the year, what we do at each one. And really, I think we're ahead of the game in terms of what we do for my evaluation. So really, it's just kind of agreeing on what that looks like each time. So you can see in October, well, let's jump to April, May. Right now, the process says that I provide a self-evaluation. And then, each board member fills out an evaluation progress towards meeting the education plan objectives. And then after that, I added something about the board chair develops a rough draft of the evaluation summary in preparation for the evaluation session by the board. And I think that was either Arlen or Jim who suggested that after the last evaluation, so that we don't go through the, it's a way to save some time if that summary is done beforehand. And then the board can discuss whether or not that's accurate or if it should be changed, that kind of thing.
Okay, maybe we should, for Anna and Nikki, this evaluation is done by SurveyMonkey. Are you familiar with that, both of you? Nikki, are you? But anyway, it's
fun with it, Nikki.
No, sorry.
The SurveyMonkey, it's an online survey basically with questions that you fill out, multiple score 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, whatever it is on each type for rating performance. In this situation, a superintendent's performance on that. And then after, it's usually a week or 2 that's there for doing that. Once that's completed, the results are tabulated for an average rating for each one of these different questions or items that are on that survey. And then that material is provided to all the board members. And that's where we got hung up last year. It was done ahead of time at some meetings, and sometimes it wasn't. And last fall, it didn't get to us before a meeting, and then we had to go and rework it to get that out to the board members. But all this stuff is confidential now because this is evaluating an employee, which Carson is. So it's only the board members. It's not public information. And then once that evaluation, the summary is done of each one of those items, then we go in closed session and talk about it. And from there, the board chair prepares a summary of what the goals were and how we did and stuff. And that's a public summary release to the public, but everything else is confidential. Is it making any sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, the only exception is that, I could call for it to be an open session if I wanted. Rarely does that ever happen in Minnesota, but that's certainly possible.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think Arlen summarized the rest of what happens in April and May. And then if you look back through the October, November part, that evaluation is more based on kind of overall skills and knowledge as a superintendent. So in the spring, we go through the education, meeting the promises in the education plan. And then in the fall, it's kind of an overall evaluation.
Right. The spring one is just a general midterm. Are we working towards what we talked about 5 or 6 months earlier? And then the main one is the fall one, right, Carson? They got named summative and something else, but I call one's the main evaluation and one's an in-between evaluation.
And I purposely left off mid-year and end of year because we kept going back and forth about which one was more important. I mean, really, both evaluations count. They're both lead to a summary. And so I didn't say which one was mid-year or end of the year because I didn't want to, they're both important. So that's how I did it. But that's another thing we can talk about if we want to label those.
And this process is only 2 years old, going to the twice-a-year system. So that's why we're working our way through. It was something that MSBA put out, and nobody really had worked much with the twice-a-year evaluation. So it's still forming and getting refined as it goes here, I guess. So that's why I'm not real definitive on it either.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is.
I know there was a lot of discussion in December about, and maybe even November, about like voting on the superintendent's contract and whether that would be current board members or existing board members or how that went. So I feel like that might be something good to add in here, is a timeline of how that happens so that it is clear that, that expectation, because elections are always, unless it's a special election, they're always going to be held at that end of the year. So if, October, November is when the evaluation is happening, you're going to run into that every 2 years when you have an election, if you have, new people coming on the board from that election. So that might be a good spot to clarify, because I watched you guys go around and around in the meeting about it for a while. If a decision was made and it was clarified, that might just help everybody, moving forward, whether it was to say it's January or to say it's December, like either way, to, kind of get that plan put in place.
Yeah, and I just looked through it and there's nothing, I didn't include anything about that. So negotiations with the superintendent would be a logical thing to include.
You'll get differing opinions on how and why and when on that, and so I don't know. It doesn't always end up being on an election year either necessarily. 3-year superintendent contracts are probably the most common, I think, but you can do anywhere from 1 to 3 years. You cannot go more than 3 years. And the reason of the timing is superintendent's contracts typically go through the school year, which is July 1st through June 30th. So the contract would normally be on that cycle of 1, 2, or 3 years. So But what took place there is if a evaluation doesn't go favorably, for whatever, it gives the superintendent time to look for a different position in another community, and how much time should be there, 6 months, 3 months, whatever. But this is the time of year when I guess you would say there are probably more changes in superintendents going on for the next year.
Yeah, with COVID, everything is different. So I'm not sure if there'll be more or fewer openings.
And then you have situations in districts where there might be something that didn't work out well between the district and the superintendent without
Yeah.
naming other area schools that has an issue.
Yep. And that happens, things like that happen to good people, so that's just how it goes, and, we have to live with it. So, but I can certainly put something in there. I'm not sure if it'd be a separate article or not, or what, but, and one other thing, by law, a superintendent can only negotiate during the last year of his or her contract. So if somebody has a 3-year contract, nothing can happen during the first 2 years. It has to be negotiated in the third. So, but I could outline that, so at least it's clear to people.
Right, and they are not contract extensions, they are new contracts that you negotiate.
Right.
It's just a little nitpicky on the wording, but you would not extend a contract, you would negotiate a new contract to take effect at the end of the existing one.
Even if something is just in there that like, like this is the timeline and the goal is to have the negotiations begin by a certain date, or, something like that. Even if it's just written as like goals, at least that would just kind of help people keep that timeline in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good suggestion. So the next one is board and committee meetings. Let's see here. The first section is just operational norms. There are 2 references to the open meeting law, included there. So we always have to follow a statute in terms of closing and whether or not we record it and those kinds of things. The next section is a new one, audio taping, videotaping, and live streaming of meetings. And I just threw something out. This isn't what Karsten necessarily wants, but I wanted to put something down on paper so we can change it when the board looks at it. But right now I have each regular meeting is videotaped and live streamed if feasible. We've been doing that for some time. And then I put down special meetings, workshop and training sessions, and committee meetings are typically not videotaped or live streamed. And again, I think there's great value in doing that. But at the same time, I think we have to decide together if that's a commitment we want to make. So I think that'll be a big discussion topic on Monday. Do you have any gut feelings on that?
I'll open my mouth again. I think there's a place for special meetings to be videotaped, and there's a place where maybe not. So I'm looking at the wording, maybe special meetings, workshops, and training sessions may or may not be videotaped or live streamed. Just leave it open-ended for the time and what's going on. It's a lot of work that goes involved to have a special meeting and have it videotaped. If it's a 5-minute meeting to approve the hiring of somebody, that's not controversial or anything, but just something that had to be done on the spur of the moment with a 3-day notice. So, but I think there is some real merit in videotaping a special meeting if it's dealing only with, we'll just say, return to school plan.
Right. Yeah, we definitely want to leave some things open. I know board members in the past would have preferred not to videotape or live stream training sessions. People in the public can still attend and observe and report on them, but at least that's what some board members have expressed in the past. So it may or may not might be a good solution.
Yeah, I think like Arlen said, when it's a special meeting that is, involves more of kind of what the public needs to know, every attempt to make it available for people should be done. I really like that the regular meetings are live streamed. I think that that's been really good. The ease of people being able to watch it. But yeah, I can see why a workshop or a training session, like if I'm being recorded and it's saved on the internet forever, like I might be a little less inclined to ask what I think is maybe a stupid question, but that I want clarification on, and like, of course, because we couldn't be in person for like our first orientation kind of thing of getting to know each other, like there's nothing in my life that's secretive, but at the same time, like, I don't know if it's going to be recorded and saved forever. Like how I present my biography might be a little bit different if, like it's just that it's a little awkward and weird to have that kind of living forever for people to pull up. Not that there's anything, secretive or anything like that. It's just, how much of
It changes.
Yeah.
Changes how we act. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
The next section has to do with agenda preparation and distribution. During COVID, I will admit that this hasn't always been followed. And typically, we try to get all the materials up on the Wednesday before a Monday meeting. We don't like a lot of changes, but over the past several months, it's just been a constant flux of change. So I apologize for that. And hopefully things someday will settle down. But board members really appreciate getting the materials available to them a few days in advance. Meeting preparation and attendance, that's just documentation as far as who does what when we're preparing for meetings, so we don't forget who does what. Oh, and then the next page is board meeting minutes. And this has been a change over the past year and a half, because before that, I would, administrative assistant would write the rough draft of the minutes, and then I'd be the one who was double checking everything before we get in the board packet. But I learned from MSBA that really it's the board's meeting, not the superintendent's meeting. And so they suggest that the clerk should be the one who's really in charge of the minutes. And so we've kind of transitioned into, the clerk taking that on. So anyway, I think that'll work out, really well. And of course, Jennifer Tift is very meticulous with that. So I think it'll be good.
I think
Sorry.
we might
Can
want
we go back? Sorry, I was on mute and I was trying to talk. Can we go back to agenda preparation again? The
Oh, we
second
lost
last.
Anna. Anna just got kicked out of the meeting. So how about if we wait just 30 seconds? There she is.
Okay, back on the board meeting. The board approves or revises agenda at the start of each meeting. The chair conducts the meeting based on the approved agenda. That's true on a regular board meeting, but I think there should be some clarification. Special board meetings cannot act on anything that wasn't previously on the agenda.
Right.
Just for clarity on that, because this says board meetings, that would assume any board meeting, and there is a distinction. You can act on anything you want at a regular board meeting, whether it's on the agenda or not, ahead of time, but a special board meeting, you can only act on what is on that previously notified agenda.
Yeah, I can make that change.
Thank you. Sorry to go back.
No, that's fine.
I was just going to add before I clicked the wrong button and left. For the board meeting minutes, this might be something that we want to talk about on Monday as well, just because I know that has the issue of what gets included and how it gets included has come up a number of times. And so if there's maybe more clarification in this area, that might help, head off some of those misunderstandings.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find some language about that from statute.
Right. Along with the minutes, I raised the issue at the last meeting. I still know how I didn't get heard, messed up in it, but the meeting on consent agenda on this current set of minutes does reflect what we voted on. I'm still not 100% sure that's actually the way it should be done. I thought it was supposed to show the vote on each individual item separately. I'm wondering if we could just get clarification from MSBA how to properly write that consent agenda
Sure.
minutes. I think it might be in statute. I know it's in parliamentary procedure and other things that you have to record consent agendas one by one. So, but just, so that might be here. I know it's in our policy on what did I say last week? Was it 8 something or whatever it is said there actually in our policy, unless that's what we're working on now. I don't think it is. So.
Yeah, we can clarify that. Then I put something down for committee meeting minutes because this was also brought up recently. And, in the past, we've always kind of treated them as notes, not minutes. But a more formal response would be to have the committee review the minutes and approve them, and then issue them to the public. The negative with that, of course, is that then it's an extra month before the official approved minutes are shared with the public. So what I did there is just, and maybe as a compromise, if the committee chair can just provide a verbal update at the next regular meeting, or if we had unapproved minutes, shared at the board meeting or something, just so we get it out as soon as possible.
Is it required by law to have minutes of committee meetings?
I do not believe so.
I'm just wondering if we should go back. I always assumed everything we did was a summary of what took place in the meeting, not actually minutes, but.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any legal requirement. And, we typically don't take votes, in the committee either, which is what you'd want in the minutes. It's more of a description, like Darlene said, as far as what happened during the meeting. And if there's a recommendation or consensus to share with the board, then that would be listed. And then you see information about the consent agenda and donations. Hey, we're almost done. If we jump to communications, I just listed the administrative updates that hopefully are more thorough now, once again. And then the next one is response to correspondence sent to the board. And this is something we may or may not want to look at because it's, we have a lot of people sending messages. And like this week, I haven't been feeling well, and so I fell way behind. So, other superintendents don't seem to have as many email messages being sent to all board members. So I'm not saying that's good or bad, but you should just think about that.
I've been thinking about it here the last couple of days with all the emails we've been getting, and they all say the exact same thing or very close. Several of them are exactly the same. And when and how or what to respond to it, I certainly value the input from everybody, but at the same time, there's an awful lot of time that can be spent responding individually to each individual one of those emails to acknowledge that we got them. Maybe it just needs to, rather than writing a response, just, I see there's a place where it says, thank you for the comments or something, and that's all you go with. When you get into that type of thing, it's really like it's a, and I guess maybe we do have a petition coming now. It's almost like it's a petition where everybody copies and pastes it with their name and sends it out. And it's very time consuming to do all them and to give an individual response to each one.
Yeah, definitely, especially if there are 8 of us doing it. So
I really appreciate you replying to them, Karsten, because yeah, I mean, that does take a lot of time, and I try to condense when I'm working on board things and when I'm doing my real job, my other job. And yeah, when it's that time consuming of that many emails, like there are a lot of things that I feel like would be more productive uses of my time. Not that I don't value the input, I do, and I read them, I read all of them. But in terms of replying, you know, I could read a lot of other things that, you know, to use that time and to, you know, gain more knowledge versus just replying to things. So I appreciate that you do reply to them, because I think it is important that people know we got the message, but you know, I don't have time to write a personalized response to every single one of them when we get flooded with them.
Right. Right. And again, sometimes there are situations when it just isn't feasible to respond. So I wish more people would actually use the petitions, you know, where there's a statement and then people can sign on. I can't remember the name of that one website, but you know, there's a website when you can, you know, put that on and then people sign up and it can go viral, that kind of thing. I think that'd be more impactful than having 30 different emails all saying the same thing. So the next section has to do with public comment at board meetings, and I think we do a pretty good job with that. You know, we get some public comment, but not too many. There are some schools that had like 15 hours of public comment last summer and fall. Not in Minnesota, as far as I know, but like in Florida, 15 or 17 hours of public comment about returning to school. So that would just wear all of us out. No good decisions are made. The next part is board members are encouraged to set up in-person or virtual meetings with me on a regular basis. So, you know, all of you feel free to do that. I really enjoy the one-on-one conversations, actually. So, you know, hopefully in March we can kind of get that ball rolling again after I feel a little bit better. I think our board members are generally really good at requesting additional information. And I know it's such a short turnaround time if something gets posted on Wednesday, you know, to digest everything and ask questions, but I think that's gone really well here over the last couple of months. I know, Anna, you've had some questions. And I'm trying not to, maybe this is to a fault, I'm trying not to share more information with just 1 or 2 board members than others. Now, Pam and Jim, it's kind of a different situation as the chair and the vice chair, but I really try to at least share it out somehow. So, you know, I still have to figure that out. So like if Arlen asks me some questions on Thursday, you know, either I'll try to respond to everyone, or better yet, just include it in some sort of summary during the board meeting. And again, it's just so everyone has the same kind of information and the public is aware of it. So I'm kind of learning what the best ways might be there. So anytime as we go through this, let me know if I'm sharing too much or not enough, or it's unfair. You know, I'll gladly change.
I appreciate getting, you know, when clearly some other board member has asked for information and you send it out to all of us. I appreciate it because sometimes it's a question that, you know, I have kind of thought about and would probably raise in the meeting, but didn't feel compelled to email about it. So having that information beforehand is, I think, always helpful. I think the more information, the better. And, you know, that way we're hopefully as ready as possible to discuss the issues during the meeting instead of, you know, kind of going through information that we could have had beforehand. I know it gets complicated with the open meeting law, so like I don't usually reply to things, you know, because I don't want us to get in trouble there. But I think it is good when you send things out to everybody, or like you said, when it goes in the packet, because then the community can see that there was all this information that we were using to make the decisions, that we were basing the decisions off of. I think that's helpful because I think people sometimes don't realize, you know, what we have available and that they could look at it too.
And really, all that correspondence should be made available to the public at the board meeting. So this is kind of a step in that direction. You know, but I think we can continue to do more there, you know, for transparency. Public input and unified response are listed there. And then the last page in this article, handling stakeholder questions and concerns. This one is so challenging for every district that I've ever known. So, and Anna just had it shared a concern just a couple of days. Perfect. You know, so the parent had called you, said that such and such hadn't happened, had gone through, or at least attempted to go through the proper channels, and then, you know, Anna called me. So, but the part that I really liked is that you asked the parent, you know, if she had done such and such, you know, and I think that was perfect. So we always want to refer people to talk to the person, you know, responsible. So, but I'll tell you what, that is the toughest thing in the world. And I have to admit, I'm just as guilty because, you know, if there's a parent, you know, calling me upset about something or maybe in tears about something, you know, every time I talk to the person, you know, I take a statement, and you know, and I think that complicates things too. So I have a lot to learn. That, you know, if there's something at Burnside, for example, you know, I need to at least survey what's happening and then make sure that the parent goes through the Burnside principle, or, you know, whatever the case might be. So this one's really tough, I think, for everyone. Any questions about that, or? Oh, the next section.
As clear as possible. You know, like you said, it's difficult, but I think that's as good as it can be in a written statement that we have to apply to everything.
Right. Yeah. The next section is perfect for this committee because it has to do with policy committee. And you can see that, you know, kind of some overall things for this committee. You know, we typically review the proposed policies before going to the board. We didn't do that with the face coverings because it was sort of a, maybe we did, I guess I can't remember. It was sort of an emerging one.
Yeah, it might have initially gone to the committee, but it didn't come to the committee for like the revision of it. But
yeah, that could be.
It was a weird situation.
Yeah, so that's why I said generally. And then, you know, typically we go through a first reading and a second reading of the policy on different nights. And then the third meeting at the board level, you know, we actually approve it. So that's kind of how it goes. The next section just says who maintains the policies. The last part is the policy review schedule. Every year we need to review those top policies. And then we take 1/3 of the policies every year for review. So this year is the 400 series and the 500 series of policies, which, by the way, are the most time consuming out of all the policies. So I'm sorry to share that news with you. They're also the most important because they deal with students and staff. But Yeah, I mean, we'll have like 60 or 70 policies to review, and they're pretty intensive. But a lot of it is just becoming familiar with the policies and asking some questions. We rely heavily on the School Board Association for their model policies. And I think we have to be really careful about going on our own with policies. Sometimes it's perfectly legit, but we have to be careful. So what I'm thinking after we go through the admin procedures handbook, then I think the next meeting that we have will be to look at those policies that we review on a yearly basis and get those out of the way. Then we'll just start taking 5 to 10 policies each month and go through the calendar year.
So what is the procedure for reviewing the policy? Would we do like this, where we basically go through it one page at a time? Or would we all be responsible for reading it and saying what we think should change or what questions we have? I mean, like what's the process?
Yeah, it would take too long to go over each policy. And so what we want is for board members to review the policy on their own before the meeting, and then we just try to, as quickly as possible, go through those policies, see if there's something questionable or why is it this way, that kind of thing. So, and once we get in the groove, it won't be so bad. So it won't be as time consuming as what we're doing with this handbook.
Right. Just so everybody knows, we're required by law, I believe it is, to review policy once every 3 years. I believe it is. And that's why we got the 3-year cycle. And there are certain policies, as Carson alluded to, that are required to be reviewed annually. And it doesn't mean they had to be changed, but they need to be reviewed. So we will get a list of what we're going to look at that meeting. Hopefully everybody will read up on it, make notes of what their concern are, what they see there. And if Carson's would be putting this out, I believe, if there's proposed changes, he would note them to us prior to the meeting, so we'd be ready to act on it. It won't be so overwhelming if you look at it that way.
Yeah. And so those are the policies we review, but then also the School Board Association usually comes up with 20 to 30 policies that have suggested changes. And so it's this constant either reviewing the policies or making some changes. Sometimes we review the policy and then a month later we're changing it, or vice versa. It's kind of a pain, but in the end, it usually works out. And I will say that I think we're actually pretty good compared to most districts in terms of our policy review process.
I would go along with that. Heidi was very meticulous with policy when she was here, and very involved with our policies and worked very diligently, and she left things in really a very good state for us here. So
yeah. And you've been active too, Arlen. So
well, I was there, but under her direction, she was excellent with this stuff and had things very well organized.
Yeah, we went through it pretty well, that's for sure. The next article has to do with planning, and I threw out a lot of stuff in 2021. Some of it was going to happen in 2020, and then of course COVID screwed everything up. So I don't know if we can do all 3 of those things. We might have to scale back a little bit on each one, but I think they're all important to take a look at. And then the last article has to do with student board members. And so this one might be up for some debate as well. And Anna, are you the one who's going to be working with next year's group?
Yes, and I met with Pam to kind of get the information about, excuse me, what she had been doing so far. But beyond that, I haven't done anything with it yet. But yes, it is now me.
Well, and really, you're ahead of the game right now. The goal is to try to find some people for next year, this spring. So I think we're in good shape there. That's all I've got.
Well, that's good, because we should try to get out of here in less than an hour. And you got 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions here?
Oh, I'll add, typically I would take your feedback and make changes in the document and then post it for Monday night. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do that. So, hopefully we don't go through, I don't want you guys to think we wasted time here today. But, at least we've identified some things that we want to look at, and we can just mention it right in the meeting. So hopefully we'll do that. So but typically I would do that. It's just since I'm working from home and not feeling the best, it may not work out. Oh, we'll see. Maybe I'll have a burst of energy tomorrow and get an updated draft.
I have a question about the legislative component of this. I know that Heidi was super active in, keeping track of everything that was happening with the legislation. I can't speak today. And I have read like the Due North Education Plan, but because there's so much that goes through legislation that has no bearing on anything that I'm interested in, I tend to tune out. So I'm just wondering like what our role is and how, I assume I've seen MSBA put out information about, things to know about, things that have changed, but I'm just like, that's the part of this committee that gives me the most pause, is like to try to keep track of everything that's happening with the Minnesota legislature, as well as all the other things. Just feels like a giant mountain of a task.
Yeah, and please do not try to keep up with everything at the legislature. It just, you'll see the highlights, you'll read the newspaper. MSBA sends out some nice summaries. So if I were you, I would focus on that instead of trying to look at every piece of legislation. So that's just me. Arlen or Nikki, maybe you have some different perspectives.
I guess I would like to ask that I can see a lot of stuff that's coming up, but I may not interpret the consequences for our district if it goes through. I would assume that, Carson, you would get information from Superintendent's Association, different entities about legislation and how it may impact us, and would bring that back to us here as a committee instead of us trying to anticipate what it means to us. I'm looking for direction from administration to us. This is something we need to be concerned about.
Yeah. And we get that from our, the Superintendent Association has a lobbyist. Minnesota Rural Education Association has a different lobbyist. And so we get information from them. I'll have to think about, whether or not I can just forward some of that summary stuff to you. Although you don't want to be bombarded with emails either. But yeah, I would think that generally the administrators would receive that information, filter it out, and then clue in board members as needed. Now, Heidi was in a special role with MSBA. She was on the delegate assembly. And so that's a different ballgame altogether. And one of these days we'll have to go through that process and possibly even determine kind of reinvigorate our platform process. That was actually starting to work out pretty well, and then life happened. So we need to get back to that. Oh, you're on mute, Arlen.
Sorry, Nikki, we haven't heard much from you. Anything you got to say yet before we leave?
No, I'm just observing. I'm just kind of taking it all in and just observing for now.
Okay.
This is my first meeting, so.
I'm trying not to be too dominant at a meeting, and I've really failed here already. So.
No, I like the direction because you have experience in this, and and you're communicating things very well for us to understand. So thank you, Arlen.
All right. Well, anything you guys need, if you need another meeting, another format or something, please don't hesitate to ask Carson, myself, or whatever. We'll make it go to have it work for everybody. I'm learning here too, because I kind of tagged along on this policy committee for the last year or so. So I know what's been done, and being on the board, I know different things they have done, but this is new for me, chairing a meeting like this.
All right. Well, if you're okay, then let's end this one, and we'll look at the admin procedures next time.
Sounds good to
Sounds
me.
good.
All right. See you
Bye.
later.
We are meeting virtually over Google Hangouts, 6 o'clock. So let's do the roll call. Mr. Bryant,
Present.
Ms. Buck,
Here.
Mr. Derricks,
Here.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Here.
Ms. Tower,
Here.
Ms. Tift,
Here.
and Chair is here. So all 7 school board members are present along with Superintendent Karsten Anderson. We will go ahead and rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Mr. Bryant has agreed to share with us the mission of the Red Wing Public Schools.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. You will have seen the agenda in your board book, which was kind of acting funny today. I hope everyone had a chance to get in there. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, based on our conversation earlier today, Pam, I'd like to add the topic of in-person or hybrid school board meetings to the agenda. I'd
Where?
suggest that is probably item number 5 under business items.
Okay, sounds good.
And Madam Chair, I think we discussed there's some public comment coming up, probably related to the topic of bringing kids back into school. So I ask that we just segue from that public comment discussion right into the transition plan and discussion there, since we're on the topic.
I think that would make the most sense. So we would move communicate under communications. After number 3, public comment, we would segue right into the transition plan, return to school. That would move the school board reports and the administrative reports. We'll do that right after that before we start the consent agenda. Is that okay? We'll just put that right in there. I believe there's a great amount of community interest in our meeting this evening, and we're going to have a lot of people tuning in. So we want to be respectful of their time too and be able to discuss what I believe they're all watching for. So we'll do that. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda with those 2 changes in business item number 5, in-person board meetings, and moving that transition plan up to right under public comment.
I was just gonna say, so moved.
Oh, Jim will second.
Holly and Jim, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, then we will begin the vote with Nikki Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So the agenda passes with those 2 changes. All right, next up on our agenda is recognitions and upcoming events. I don't know any of you have seen it or are watchers of Saturday Night Live, but apparently they had a picture of Jefferson School in the beginning of a skit this last Saturday night. So it's been the talk of town, but it's kind of nice. Many people have confirmed that it was indeed a picture of Jefferson School that was used in a skit. So that's pretty cool. I just wanted to underscore that. Any other recognitions or upcoming events?
This is Anna. I just wanted to recognize, we didn't at the last meeting, but that February is Black History Month. And I know that Karsten has some information in the superintendent's plan about what the district is doing for that, but just wanted to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you, Anna. Any other recognitions or upcoming events? Okay, seeing none, and then we will move on to public comment. I have received two public comments, one from Neil Lahammer and one from Rhodey Guzzi. Are there any others that I missed? All right, so I will, I've been directed to read on behalf of Meg and Neil Lahammer. They say, we are writing to oppose the back to school plan being proposed at the school board meeting on Tuesday, February 16th. As a parent, no input was sought from us, even though we have two children who would be directly affected by the change. And as teachers, no input was sought from me, even though the building I teach in will be directly affected by the change, with an increase in the number of students in the building. The big elephant in the room is the 3-foot social distancing guidelines being proposed, which, if we are all honest with ourselves, really means little to no social distancing at Red Wing High School in a packed classroom of 30-plus students. We think this would be a careless and reckless decision. Imagine an in-person school board meeting, remember those? Packed with people less than 6 feet apart for an extended period of time. That's what these classrooms at Red Wing High School will be like, with 30-plus kids and a teacher. We believe all these changes for the last 2 months of the school year are not in the best interest of the safety of students or staff. If the plan is approved, our two daughters, Audrey in 10th grade and Beatrix in 6th grade, will finish off the last 2 months of the school year 100% online with their current teachers. Sincerely, Neil and Meg Lahammer. And then we also have Rhodey Guzzi. Rhodey is with us this evening, and I see that she is on this call. And so, Rhodey, if you could, I will turn it over to you, just reminding you that your comments will be expected to be 3 minutes. And I believe that you are a representative speaking on behalf of a group. The board members will listen to public comment, and then because of the change in our agenda this evening, we actually will be segueing right into the topic. We expect comments to remain respectful and appropriate and not identify any current or former students, their families, or staff members. And so, Rhodey, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Great, thank you for having me. My name is Rhodey Guzzi, and I have 3 children currently enrolled in the Red Wing School District in grades 11, 8, and 6. Tonight, I am representing a group of 44 families in Red Wing that include Matt and Rhodey Guzzi, Chris and Sarah Ball, Jeff and Jody Anderson, Kyle and Jolene Knutson, Charlie and Tammy Bryant, Julie Bradford, Jason and Carrie Wittenberg, Sean and Casey Tanner, Shane and Kelly Peterson, Chris Ehlers and Dewey Beard, Bill Hanisch, Lori and Brian Hammond, Andrea and David Bocek, Rachel Schoenfelder, Rebecca Thompson, Ross and Kelly Lexfeld, Lynette Peterson, Tim and Vicki Hadimer, Gary and Colleen Thomas, Allison Benway, Christine Chandler, Dan Shelley and Morley Struess, Paul Seeley, Megan Odell, Yanelis Jeanette and Jesus Reyes, Eileen Atkinson, Nancy Bremseth, Rich and Brittany Luchin, Chris and Joey Zilka, Vanessa Betcher, Jason and Katie Van Kampen, Bob and Ann Gonscher, Joe and Jody Lizey, Kevin and Carrie Reister, Matt and Jen Tice, Kristen Kronbeck, Tony and Brooke Camps, Kim Reinitz, Dave and Janie Fair, Nick and Callie Sparby, Chris and Sally Samansky, Brent and Ashley Kaler, Melissa and Joseph Brownrider, and Peter and Jamie Zotalis. We strongly believe our children should be in school for full-time in-person learning. Many of the surrounding school districts in Goodhue County, including Lake City, Zumbrota-Mazeppa, and Goodhue, are returning middle and high schoolers to school full-time and in-person between the weeks of March 1st and March 15th. Several private schools in the metro area with student enrollment close to Red Wing enrollment size have been able to operate grades K through 12 with full-time in-person learning nearly the entire school year. Teachers and staff in the school are essential workers, and the school is the center of our community. The academic and social well-being and mental health of our students should be at the top of the administration and school board's priority list. Families of students who do not feel comfortable with in-person learning have the option to continue with online learning for the remainder of the school year. If we do not return to in-person learning this school year, some families may be forced to look at other options for their children for next school year due to uncertainty surrounding the upcoming school year. We urge the board to make a decision tonight based on data, facts, and the best interests of our students, and listen to the voices of parents of the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rhody. I appreciate you being here this evening. I think we all do. That's a long list of parents that you're speaking on behalf of. So we appreciate all of those parents bringing their voices forward this evening as well. Superintendent Anderson, I will turn it over to you to start our discussion off with the transition of getting our students back to school.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair Rowe. So the proposed transition plan to return to school is included in the board packet. And first off, I listed some key criteria for decision making, including compliance with state and federal law, local COVID rates, staff availability, substitute availability, and staff vaccination rates. And really what I should say there instead is how many staff members have been offered vaccinations. We don't know for sure how many actually take the vaccinations. As Rhody mentioned, regardless of what happens with the return to school plan, there will be the continued option for online only schooling for all of our kids this year. It's mandated by the state. It's the right thing to do. And so that will continue. I just want to reassure people that that's not going to change. There was discussion about changing up in terms of what platform we would use, but we're going to keep it the same for the rest of this school year. So there's some kids who have Edgenuity only, and there are other kids who tap into their particular teacher's classrooms. We're going to leave it just the way it is. So just wanted to make sure everyone knows that. We looked at two different kinds of learning models as we bring kids back. Our goal is to bring students back into the building as much as possible, preferably 4 or 5 days a week. So the 5-day option, obviously would be the most preferable generally. But we do have some issues because, we do have some issues because all of our teachers in grades 5 through 12 are teaching in-person kids, and they're teaching distance to those who are in the distance mode. That really complicates things for our teachers. Also, the governor's order indicated that for teachers who are doing some sort of distance learning, that we are obligated to provide an extra 30 minutes of prep time each day on average to those teachers. And that's very challenging in our situation, especially for the 5th and 6th grade teachers. I think we could meet the state criteria for grades 7 through 12, but I think it'd be very difficult to do that for grades 5 and 6, just because it would require extra substitutes that we don't have. So we looked at another option, what I called the 4+1 learning option. And in that model, all kids would be learning in person 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And then on Wednesdays, they would learn via distance learning. That enables us to provide the additional prep time for 5th and 6th grade teachers on Wednesdays. So it's kind of a shortened time there. We put all of the prep time on those Wednesdays so that the additional prep is granted. So we've been looking at those two different learning models. What the initial recommendation is, and I fully anticipate that that there'll be a different motion made, or maybe an amendment, or something like that. That's to be expected. When I came up with a proposed timeline, I quipped with the administrative team that absolutely no one is going to like the timeline, because there will be people who want to stay in hybrid for the rest of this year, and there'll be others who want to move more quickly back into the classroom. I was completely right on that. There are definitely these two different forces, so the challenging part for the school board is it's really up to the school board to decide for sure what makes the most sense for Red Wing students and staff members. But the initial recommendation was to start students in grades 5 and 6 in the 4+1 learning model on April 5th, along with grades 7, 8, and 12. And then 2 weeks later, as required by the governor's order, and students in grades 9, 10, and 11 would begin the 4+ learning model. So that was the original recommendation. I will say that in speaking with administrators today, I did confirm that 5th grade could come back to learning 5 days per week. So I just confirmed that today. So instead of a 4+1 model, we could go for 5 full days for 5th grade. And then we would make a change in terms of we would have one 5th grade teacher responsible for the online only kids. So we think the 5th grade teachers would be very pleased with that, because I can only imagine how difficult it is to teach in 2 different modes all the time. I think that's very challenging. So that's one slight change. We initially suggested April 5th because it's the beginning of 4th quarter. Classes can be balanced more easily, so we won't have to balance the classes in 3rd quarter and then again in 4th quarter. We'd have more time to address staff member concerns, and more staff members would have the chance to be vaccinated. I'll give you some more information about that later. Finally, at the time of this recommendation, the gym, we were talking about using the gym for lunch at the high school, because we have some concerns about too many kids being in the lunchroom at the same time. However, we found a different, better way of handling that right in the cafeteria. You can see a list of the resources used as we're going through this transition to return to school plan. Under the requirements and considerations, I'm not going to go through every single item, but I'll highlight the most important one. Neil Lehammer hit it right on the head. The key issue is social distancing. In order for us to go back to either 5-day in-person learning or a 4+1 model, we would need to follow the recommended guidance from the state as far as at least 3 feet of social distancing. It's strongly recommended, it's not required, but instead of the 6 feet social distancing, we would go back and rely on 3 feet of social distancing. Now, in some of our classes, we can do more than 3 feet. For example, 5th grade, we're very close to a 6-foot social distancing setup, and we would actually meet it if we moved one of our classrooms into the cafeteria in that big Burnside. But the preference of the admin team would be to slightly lower that social distancing expectation and not move a classroom into a space that just isn't conducive to high quality learning. So, we've implemented 6 feet of social distancing since the beginning of the school year by doing a number of things, and I think we should be proud of the work we've done there. But it's simply impossible to bring everyone back and expect a 6-foot distancing requirement. It just isn't going to happen. And I would argue that I think almost every school in Minnesota has to do the same thing. if they're back in person, I would venture a guess that they are not following the 6-foot social distancing guideline. There might be some exceptions, but I doubt it. I'm going to skip the rest of the items on that page, but jump to human resources on the second page or on the next page. This still remains a concern to us about staff and substitute availability. And I know that Education Minnesota did survey teachers, I believe over the weekend or perhaps on Monday. And so we're closely monitoring that data. The gist of the survey was to determine how comfortable teachers are coming back into the building. And there was a relatively high number that felt uncomfortable. I will note though, that even if there's 3-foot social distancing for kids, we would still make every effort, every reasonable effort to have 6 feet of social distance between an adult and kids whenever it's feasible. And again, that's, I think, an expectation that the state has. It's also the right thing to do because it's clear that the data shows that the people at risk in that classroom are the adults, not so much the students. Everyone's at risk, but clearly there's a higher level of risk for those adults. So we would make those efforts to have a 6-foot social distancing. Now, it's not possible to, for example, if there's a one-on-one paraprofessional for a child with an IEP, it's not going to be possible to have 6 feet of distance throughout the whole day for those adults. We would make every reasonable effort to accommodate that. We currently have 7 permanent subs, and we're looking for an 8th. Because of the possible need for substitutes, we would like to request an additional 2 to 4 permanent subs so that we can cover the classes on every day. So there's an added expense to that, but I think it would be worth the expense just to make sure we have enough adults in the building. Item 6 has to do with staff COVID testing. We've been implementing the staff testing every other week. We've had about 140 to 150 staff members take it on average, which is a good number. It's really easy to do. Staff members just need to go to the assigned room with the assigned person, spit into a tube for about 10 minutes. The buildings will send it into the analysis company, and we typically get the results the next day or day after that. So we're pleased that we've had literally dozens of staff members take advantage of that. If we're going to beat COVID, we've got to regularly test and then quarantine based on those results. Yeah, also have some good news on staff vaccinations. We've been working closely with the county, and we've had over 300 staff members been offered a vaccination. So that's a good number. We've been, concerned about that. There are legitimate reasons for, people to take the precautions needed, to protect themselves in classrooms and other places. And we've offered it to 300. Now, when those offers are made, sometimes the staff members will write back and say, nope, I don't want the vaccine, for a variety of reasons. Maybe they don't believe in vaccines. Maybe they want to wait and see, the results of the effectiveness of the vaccine, those kinds of things. And if that happens, then we choose the next person on the list. But we do not know who has been vaccinated or not. That's not data that we can receive from the county or from the state. But we can say that over 300 staff members have been offered the vaccine. We do have some buildings and grounds issues that we're going to have to figure out. I know 5th and 6th graders have used tables in the past in their classrooms. That does not work really well with social distancing guidelines. And so Alan is looking at options as far as buying additional desks, buying these cardboard cutout separators and some other options. So we'll see if we can get that figured out in the near future. Our transportation system is set. At the beginning of the year, we made arrangements so that regardless of the learning model, you would be under 50% capacity. So that works for in-person and for hybrid learning. So that's, I could literally call one day and they'd be ready the next. So I'm happy about that. Food services has been kind of a big issue at the high school. I know that George Nemenich, Brent Lexfold, Donna, the head cook at high school, have been working on on some plans, and they're considering the possibility of using the gym for overflow, and that might still be a possibility if needed. But of course, you have concerns about the gym floor. You don't want $100,000 or $200,000 gym floor to be ruined by spilled milk, or other things. So that's not the ideal option. But Shonda did take a look at, mathematically, she figured out that we could actually fit 250, maybe 300 kids in the cafeteria with 6-foot social distancing between the tables. So that's good news. So mathematically it works. The question is, when you have 300 kids getting their food, sitting in tables, logistically, how does that work? But mathematically it will. So we felt good about that. I know one of the board members suggested that maybe it was Don Wetter suggested the possibility of using the locker bay for overflow as well. So they're looking at some different options there. Right now, I think we can make food service work. Another consideration is implementing a rolling start. There's a reason why we have 3 grades at the high school coming in on one day, then 3 other grades coming 2 weeks later. That's because of a requirement from the state. You can only bring in 3 grades at a time in a particular building. So that's why we had 3 grades 1 week, and then we have to wait 2 weeks for the next 3 grades. That's the reason. The last part that I'll highlight, I neglected to send Shonda thank goodness. Shonda is on the call. And so Shonda, would you mind covering questions about social distancing and quarantining if we go back to in-person?
Yeah, it was last minute. Sorry if my setup isn't that great.
Yeah, it was, by the way, it was my fault, Shonda.
No worries. I was
we
like,
had
I
the
haven't
plan.
been invited. He doesn't need me. So, no, I just wanted to explain kind of what happened. So, the close contact, what we consider close contact, is still going to be within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. And so the state is saying we can set up our classrooms with a 3-foot distance between each desk, but that means now instead of having no close contacts in classrooms, we're going to have more close contacts, and that's going to multiply by how many classes. And so I just wanted to kind of share, whichever way we go, this is kind of, if we go in person, this is how it's going to look. And I dusted off my really old presentation from back in, I think it was August that I did this. So I'm just going to do a quick, presentation. And let's see if I can do this. I apologize. It's last minute. Ooh. So, and it's just a really good visual so that you can kind of see how it's going to work. Let's see here. I am so sorry about this. Okay, so I'm not going to get that work. I'm not going to waste your time. So right now in 5th and 6th grade, they are socially distant, but they spend all day within the same classroom together. And so currently, if we have a positive case within the 5th, 6th grade, we have to quarantine that entire classroom. So if it was an A day or an A block or a B block, so if it was Monday, Tuesday, we had a positive, then everyone that was there on Monday, Tuesday, we have to quarantine. Thursday, Friday, again, we have to quarantine. Now, when we bring all the kids back and they're in the same room together, we're still going to have to quarantine the whole class because they spent most of the day together in the same room with a positive person. That's just an MDH rule or a guideline. So for 5th and 6th grade, as far as how the students are doing it and how the teachers are used to doing it, it's not really going to change that much. It's really going to change, though, when we get to the high school. Right now, everyone is 6 feet apart. And so when we have a positive case of a student, at least, we know that, we talk to each teacher. We ask how that particular day went. Did they stay in their seat? Did the kids stay away from each other? And we can pretty much say that there are no close contacts in the high school. That also goes for lunch because they're all set up 6 foot apart. So it's really easy to contact trace at the high school right now, just because we've set it up to make it easy and so it doesn't affect that many people. When we go in person, though, now that we're getting rid of that 6 foot distance, for one positive case of a student, we will have to quarantine a minimum of 32 students. Depending on where they sit in the class, depending on where they are, it's going to be the person in the middle and then everyone around them because they're within the 6 feet. And they're in their class for 85 minutes. So they're automatically over that 15-minute threshold. And so if we have a student that goes to 4 different classes that day, we're quarantining 8 students around them each time. Now, lunch, the way we're working on setting it up is we're going to have cohort tables. So we're going to use the 12 seater tables. I think it's longer than 12 feet. So each table is going to be a cohort. And ideally, everyone will go into lunch that first day and say, okay, this is your seat for the rest of the year. So we can make a seating chart of who's sitting by who. And depending on where they're sitting at the lunch table, if they're sitting on the end, we only have to quarantine 8 of the students. If they're sitting in the middle, we have to quarantine all 12. So for one COVID case, we have to potentially quarantine 40 to 44 kids. That also increases the risk of school spread because we have kids sitting within 6 feet of each other for longer than 15 minutes. We could potentially have a positive case, and then 2 days later, we get a call from a quarantine kid that, okay, now I'm positive. Now I'm positive, now I'm positive. And so we're running the risk of really, spreading COVID within the school because we are so close. It's that 6 foot within 15 minutes is really gonna, is what's keeping us going for so long. And the COVID team, we've been back and forth. We're doing great with what we're doing right now, but obviously people want to move forward. They want to, get kids back in school full time. We get it. And so we just want to make you aware of kind of the consequences of going back in person. I don't want to say consequences, complications of going back in person. We're going to have a lot more kids that we're going to have to send home to quarantine, and potentially we could introduce school spread. There's my cat again, I apologize. So that's what we want to say to you. And I'm just here to answer any questions that you have. And then anything Karsten needs me to talk about as well. So.
Thank you, Shonda.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions for Shonda while she's here with us? Holly?
Goodness, that little mute thing goes up and down and up and down. Thank you for that and for the diagramming. When we have all grades in, 7 through 12, how many kids are we looking at? Do you know that are signed up to go back into school?
I don't know. I think they started registering to figure out who wants to come back full time this week. I don't know who it's going to be. We're estimating probably maximum about 900 kids.
So with 900 kids and everybody in, what do you predict would be the distance that they would have from each other?
Less than 6 feet. Each classroom is going to be different. The guideline is as far apart as you can, with 3 foot being the minimum. So no more than 3 feet. If we can take a really big classroom and put 20 kids in there and they're 6 feet apart, great. So it could definitely depend on the classroom. Now that's going to take time to figure out as well. You know, this classroom can hold 20. Can we have a class of 20 here? No, we need 24. Okay, now they're squished together. Now we have to do the, you know, quarantining all the way around. So it's going to be very dependent on each classroom. And also, I'm going to push this. We need seating charts for every classroom. And teachers need to try their hardest to keep those kids in those seats, because if we've got a lot of movement and the teacher can't say, oh yeah, they stayed in their seat, then we're going to have to quarantine the whole classroom. So there's going to be a lot more of, you know, stay seated, stay where you are. And I want to piggyback on Carson. What we're going to do is we're going to map out an area for each teacher. This is what I want to do, where they can stand and be safely 6 feet from everyone in the classroom. And that may literally just be putting painter's tape on the ground. I hope Kevin's here. He might not like that, but some sort of indicator on the ground. And just so the teachers know their boxes that they have now are going to be smaller because we've got more kids. But we want to give them that visual, because Carson's right. The kids do get sick, but kids don't get as sick as adults do. And we've really got to protect our staff right now. They're the ones that could potentially get sick and end up in the hospital. So that's one thing we want to do is when we do that, we'll make a visual so every teacher knows where they can stand and be safe. And then they can choose if they want to go out. Obviously, you can go out and help, but as long as you're not doing that for longer than 15 minutes, when you're standing and doing your lesson, you know, your box is here. This is where you need to stand. So it's all going to depend. It's going to depend. But you know, across the board, I foresee, you know, we're going to be quarantining quite a few students for just one positive case in the high school. Now, K through 4, we're great. We've been great all year. 5, 6, it's just going to be more students that'll be quarantined at a time. And, you know, 7 through 12, it's figuring out who is by who and quarantining them until they're out of quarantine. So.
2 things that I just want to underscore, Shonda. I think the seating chart idea is fabulous. That's really going to help your crew in terms of figuring out. And I think that just needs to be hammered hard from every administrator, that's the expectation in every classroom in order to keep us in school. This is what has to happen. I love the idea of being able to have that 6-foot distance from the teacher. I think that's really imperative as we move forward. And of course, I'm assuming that we're all still wearing masks. We're all hand washing. We're all doing all of those precautions. We're washing down. I do know that the lunchroom ladies have been very diligent about cleaning down every surface between kids coming and going during lunch periods. Individual teachers are wiping down tables and desks in their room as well. So all of those things are going to continue.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
They have to. None of the we're not taking away any precautions. They're all staying the same. It's just we're putting more people in a room together. And, you know, what does that mean for the school? So
yeah, good. Hannah, you're in the queue.
Thank you. Could you, Shonda, do you know why, or some of the foundational knowledge for why MDH is now, or the MDE is going with 3 feet instead of the 6 feet? Do you know what the new science is? Do you have anything to share about that?
I don't, just because the social distancing of 6 feet within 15 minutes has not changed. The only thing I can think is maybe, you know, they're getting pressure from schools to say, hey, can we loosen up on this so that we can get more kids in school? And so they're saying you're allowed to do this, whereas before we couldn't, or we shouldn't. It's all guidelines. It's not a hard rule that says you have to. I suspect it's because they want to get more kids in schools, and you know, so they say you're allowed to do this now. But just know that 6 foot rule doesn't change for contact tracing. So I didn't do my research. I apologize.
I could answer
Thank
that,
you.
Pam, if that's okay.
Okay.
I just read today that that came from the American Academy of Pediatrics. They came up with that after looking at a variety of different things, but that is their recommendation for distancing within school. So that's where MDH says that came from, and then I went and read a little bit on their information about it, but I don't have the details in terms of how they came up with that 3 feet, but that is the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation in schools.
Thank you, Jennifer. That helps to answer that question. I'm
Thanks,
also
Jennifer.
going, I don't want to assume, so I think it's really important to ask Superintendent Anderson and Shonda here if in the high school, if there are places in the school building where we can shuffle classrooms a little bit so that if there is a big classroom and we've got 24 kids, we're not cramming them in. I mean, can we be a little bit flexible in our spacing? I know that kind of throws some of those teachers off a little bit because they may not be in their rooms, but you know, using hub to hall, using the little theater, being creative with some of our spaces. Can we utilize 1/3 of the gymnasium for bigger classrooms? Those kinds of things. I'll just ask that question.
You bet. You know, George and his team are pretty creative with that. And it's not an easy puzzle to solve, but I know they'll be looking at all sorts of options. Another variation of it would be to have like 1/2 of the class in a particular classroom and then the other half somewhere else supervised by an adult. And so there could still be, you know, distance learning even though the kids are in the building. But we also have hub to hall and some other locations as well. Now, Shonda may have a different view though on hub to hall just because of the ability to clean those chairs.
It's hard to clean cloth chairs.
Yeah.
So it's easy to wipe down plastic, but the chair, I mean, it's doable. Probably the chemicals we want to use on those are not made to be used on cloth seats. So that would be an extra challenge. Obviously, I mean, if the stage is available, that's great. We can wipe that down. That's great.
Awesome. All right, it looks like Jim got kicked out visually, but he can still hear everybody. Jim, are you still able to speak?
Jim is not able to speak at this time. I'm trying to help him with the technology issue.
All right. Let's take just a pause and see if we can get that resolved so he can be active participant.
Lisa, do you have Jim's email address at his place of work so we can send that to him?
Yes,
If not,
Karsten,
I'll-
he's providing me with that email right now.
Perfect.
When we started this virtual world of meetings, we talked about, and I realize I'm trying to do this for Jennifer and Nikki and Anna. We had just decided or discussed a while ago that if somebody got kicked out, we would take a pause to make sure that they had enough time to get back in. So I'm just gonna give Jim a few more moments to try and get back in so he can be an active participant. So we will just pause here for a moment. Sorry about that, folks.
While we're waiting, I'm going to go get some water, so I'll be right back. while we're waiting for Jim, I want to thank Shonda for her work with the school district, especially this year. I can't imagine going through this without somebody like Shonda on the pulse of everything that we're doing. She has such a clear way of explaining things. So Shonda, thank you.
You're welcome.
He's on.
Okay, I see you, Jim. Thank you.
I'm back.
All right, good. We paused, so you did not miss a thing.
Okay, well, darn.
All right, so we've
Thank
got
you.
Jennifer in the queue and Nikki.
Yeah, I was just wondering about plastic partitions. Are they being used in the classroom at all so teachers can work one-on-one with students? And then is it possible to use them in the lunchroom on the lunch tables to separate students more than they already would be?
Well, they are being used on, oh, Jen, can you? There you go. No, I kept hearing myself and you. I was like, oh, that's weird. No worries. They are being used in classrooms, especially when they're working one-on-one. The barrier or the plastic partitions, you just have to think about it's another barrier. So right now everyone's wearing a mask. We're recommending that they wear face shields when they're working one-on-one, and then you have a plastic partition. So the only thing that's going to do is potentially stop you from getting COVID from someone who has it. But when we close contact, we don't take into account there's partitions or there's masks or anything. We don't even ask if you wear masks because that doesn't matter. It's the time and the distance is what is considered a close contact.
Thank you. Nikki, and then Jim.
I know there was a comment about the gym floor and preserving it and stuff. And what we have done on Prairie Island is that when we have events, we have a plastic type wrap that goes on top of it so that like food particles and stuff that don't waste it. Has there been an option to look into that type for the lunchroom, or maybe not just lunchroom, but more space for social distancing for classes? And then also a question, when they're going back to full distance, are they utilizing the lockers or no? Are they still carrying their things with them? And with that being said, is there maybe, if they go back full distance, about using one area that has cloth seating? Have we thought about maybe just using different areas? And I don't sit conventionally. I sit on the ground with my legs crossed. They usually call it Indian style, but that's neither here nor there. And I do that for many reasons. One of them is to support excellent spinal health. And I do not have any back problems because of that. Those are kind of some things to also look at too, but those were my 2 questions, 1 suggestion.
Yeah, and thank you, Nikki. Certainly, if we decide to do something in the gym, we'd want to have some sort of covering, like what you have at Prairie Island. The only problem with it is that, we need to put it on every day and then take it off because we use that area for other gym classes. So that might be kind of time consuming, but you have to protect the gym floor too. So I'm sure Alan will be taking a look at that. And then lockers, I'm not sure. I'm hoping that the kids would still take their materials with them class to class, because congregating at locker bays will make it impossible to quarantine effectively. But I would need to double check with George to make sure that's part of his plan.
Good question. I was thinking about that too, Nikki. Mr. Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I want to thank the board for pausing for me. I had some problems here and I got them resolved, and I know we had a lot of people on the call, so I don't know what the issue is, but I'm back. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to say what I said back in August. No matter what we decide tonight, not everybody's going to be happy. Some are going to not. Sometimes you don't even make everybody happy by what you decide, but we have to make a decision. I think we've heard loud and clear by the emails and other people that we've talked to that we're just about to the boiling point of frustration about not getting the kids back into school. So we want to do it as safe as possible. Our school back in August, we were talking about in the summer and early September about the cleaning and all that, and the custodian staff and everybody, and many of them have stepped up and done the things that make it safe. The numbers skyrocketed. Now they're back down, but it's really time to get kids back in school. We hear loud and clear from parents overwhelmingly, even by the emails. Yes, there are some that didn't, but the vast majority want the kids back in school. So I'll go on the limb here with everybody else. I'm not in favor of this April 4th and 18th. So I'll make a motion that we get kids back in school. I believe I heard you right, say the 5th graders can go back 5 days a week, similar to the K through 4th. On the 8th, the 5th graders go back, and 6th graders and seniors go back on the 8th. To the 6th through 12th, 6th and 9th, the 6th and 12th will be the 4+1. It sounds like we need to do that to give the prep time. I get the idea. We want 5 days a week. And then 2 weeks later, based upon the governor's orders, the other 3 grades, 9, 10, and 11 would go back on the 18th of March. So I want to get the process going here. People are listening and wanting a decision, and we need to get going and get this taken care of, and for the health of our kids and the other ones around the schools. And I've talked to a number of people, and other schools have got kids in there. No matter what we decide, like I said, not everybody's going to be happy. It may not be a unanimous vote, but anything less than that, I will not be in favor of. Or anything greater, moving out farther than not including the 8th through the 22nd of March, I will not be in favor of. So thank you for your time.
Jim, are you making a formal motion, or are you just putting those dates out there for now?
That's the formal motion.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I see Arlen in the queue. Oh, okay. So the motion's on the table. So I need a.
Can you repeat the full motion? Because there was a lot of, no fault of yours, Jim, but just a lot of narrative around the motion, just the specifics.
Sure. If I don't have to go word for word, I think I can handle it. So on the 8th of March, the 5th grade goes back full time. 6th and 12th grade go 4+1. And on the 22nd of March, 9, 10, and 11 go back 4+1.
So it's basically the same as in the proposal, except the dates are changed. Instead of it reading.
The proposal was April 4th.
Right.
And the reason we have to do that spring break is the 1st through the 5th. And so, I'd love to get them back on the 1st of March, but everybody, spring break. So we hope people are safe during that time period.
Mm-hmm. So what's in your board packet, the proposed timeline, everything is the same, except instead of April 5th, Jim is proposing March 8th. And instead of April 19th, he is proposing the 22nd of March.
And then also the 5th grade would be 5 days.
5 days a week.
5 full days a week.
All right, so the motion's on the table. I need a second. The chair will second that motion. All right, so Arlen, you are in the queue, and then Anna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's kind of awkward with the motion, the way it's been put out there, but that's fine. There's a lot of other people with questions. I guess my question is, at this time, do we have any idea when every one of our staff will have had the opportunity to get a vaccination? I'm going to be basing my decision based on when all our staff has had an opportunity to be vaccinated. And I'm wondering if anybody can give a ballpark number on that. Thank you.
Last week we got the opportunity to offer 107 staff the vaccine through the county. In weeks past, it's been about 30 a week. If we continue to get about 100 every week, we should be close. Within the next week, we will have offered every full-time regular staff a vaccine opportunity. Our next, we've also been working on bus drivers as well and a couple of subs along the way. Our next group would be the subs, and then the active casual or the part-time people is our next group. So if we keep getting 100 a week, I would say by the end of March, we would have at least offered most everyone, anyone that was paid by Red Wing Public Schools, an opportunity to get the vaccine. I can't guarantee that because we don't know what the county supply is. You know, if we do it 30 a week, it's going to be into April before we have that opportunity. So it just depends on how many we get. But we're getting closer, a lot closer than we thought we'd be by now. So.
And the second part of the question is, how long does it take for the full effect, including the second shot?
It's 2 weeks after your second shot. So 6 weeks after your first shot that you are considered fully vaccinated.
So you're looking at the middle of April?
Yeah, if we
to be fully vaccinated?
Well, if we, let's say our last group is mid-March, so that would be end of April that they would be fully vaccinated.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did I hear correctly that 300, how many people have already been offered the vaccine? Did you say earlier?
According to what Joni told me, there are about 300.
And how many staff do we have total?
Well, if you include all the casual part-time people, it's around 800.
All right, how many teachers?
We have about 200 teachers.
Okay, and I'm assuming that when you've prioritized other than, I would think that the teachers in your list of priorities were most of the higher ones?
It depended on who they taught and when they taught them, how long they taught them. If they were teaching a population that could wear masks, could social distance, they could social distance from their students. There was a lot of factors that went into that. But if we go by the timeline that we're at now, all teachers will have been offered a vaccination by, if we get 100 by next week.
That's a
if
great.
If by now, I can't guarantee that.
Right.
If it's 30 each week, it'll be another 3 weeks. So we're getting, by the end of March, all regular school employees will have had the opportunity to vaccinate. Okay. You know, I don't want to overpromise, but we're getting there.
Great. That's all good news. Thank you. Anna.
Thank you. So just because I happen to have the floor at the moment, I just want to throw out that I don't feel comfortable approving going back sooner than April. I think that the fourth quarter start, even that makes me a little nervous, but I feel better about having that time to get prepared, especially with the things like the lunchroom and all of the logistics that go into basically doubling how many people are in the high school. So I will not be voting for going back any sooner than that. But my question, so you did cover a lot of things that I was wondering about. Carson, I'm wondering if you could talk about 6th grade a little bit. So you talked about 5th grade being able to go back 5 days a week and having a 5th grade teacher that was a dedicated online teacher to reduce some of that burden for those teachers. I'm wondering where we would be at with 6th grade for that, and why 6th grade isn't possible for that. And then I'm just wondering if you could talk about why you chose the grades that you did for the high school when we have to split and have 3 come at a time. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how that decision was made. And I think those are pretty much my big questions.
Sure. The first question had to do with 6th grade. If we could possibly do the same thing for 6th grade that we're doing for 5th grade, we definitely would. The problem is that we have 43 kids in the online only option for 6th grade. That's too many for one teacher. So, the only way we could possibly do it would be to hire another online teacher to do that, which would be great if we could find a qualified person who could do that. I'm just not sure if we'd get somebody this late in the year to do that work. So also there's a difference between 5th and 6th grade, because with 5th grade, we're very close to 6-foot social distancing. We still want to call it 3 foot just because of that one classroom. 6th grade, it's a little tougher just because of the size of the classes and then where they're located.
Okay, so for those 6th grade students, or for the 6th grade classrooms, how many teachers or how many students do you know will the average teacher have that are in person, and how many will they have online? And is there any additional support that we can give to offset that burden of having to be simultaneously with a large number of students?
Yeah, the 6th grade model would be very similar to what our 7 through 12 teachers experience. So it'd be the same kind of deal. Because the high school teachers also teach kids in person, as well as people on online only options. So, I'd probably put them in the same category. The easiest solution would be to hire one more online only teacher who was at least understood the curriculum or could pick it up, real soon, and then we could split up those 2 or the large number of online only into 2 groups, and then that would work well. As far as which grades, in the end, I essentially let George decide. But I know he looked at several options: 7, 8, 9 first, and then the older kids. You reverse, and then Jim mentioned 7th grade, 8th grade, and seniors. I think essentially just to get the seniors in the door as soon as possible, because it's their last year, and they've had challenging year and a half, that's for sure. But I let George decide, and that's the one he picked.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, Jennifer and then Nikki.
Thank you. I would just like to say, first of all, thank you for this proposal. I am one of those people on the outside, I think, who likes the timeline. I think that going back in April is a good time to do it. One, because of the vaccines. Hopefully we can get the majority of our staff vaccinated. Second, preparation for the high school. Bringing all of the kids back 4 days a week. I think it's going to be necessary to have that time to answer all of these questions that we have. With that timeline, I am all for sending the kids back. I think that our kids need to be in school for their mental health, not just for the education, but I think even more importantly right now is the mental health needs of our students. I have a couple questions though, similar to what Anna said. So is it a possibility for us to decide tonight to hire a distance-only teacher for grade 6?
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need a formal motion. although that's always appreciated. But if there is a consensus that, we'd have the authority to hire someone, then we'd go for it.
Okay. And then if we do decide to do that, would that mean that 6th grade would also go 5 days a week along with 5th grade if that teacher could be hired?
I believe so. I'd have to double check with the principals, but I'm assuming that would be the case because then the individual classroom teachers would not have the dual role. So we don't have to provide the extra prep time. So I think it makes sense that it would enable the 6th graders to be there every day. The biggest concern for me would be to find a teacher who's capable of doing that. Not only because of our curriculum, but also just, the online, it's a different ballgame. But we would definitely have our principals jump on it right away.
Okay. Another question along with the timeline. I guess I'm concerned about the idea of going back on March 5th. That really only gives us a week and a half to prepare with spring break in there. And I'm just wondering, what is that going to look like? I don't know if Shonda, if you have any thoughts on that. Is that possible? Are there, what will we be looking at in terms of some of the difficulties at the high school if we try to push this into just having a week and a half to get back to school?
It's going to be tough. We've got to redo the lunchroom. We've got to get desks in. We got to remeasure rooms. We've got to map out where teachers are standing. Teachers have to get seating charts together. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to happen in a week and a half. And I've worked extensively with the custodial group since I've started working at Red Wing. And I can tell you right now, it's going to be tough just with what we have right now. So the extra time is going to be helpful.
Thank you.
Nikki and then Holly.
It says prior to implementation of the return to school plan, the following groups will be invited to provide the feedback. Is that going to happen after tonight's meeting? And then further, how is that going to factor into our decisions?
Yeah, I had a meeting or sent out a meeting invite to several stakeholder groups. So for example, we had Phil White there as our school home liaison for Native American programming. Sent a notice to Paul Dressen as well. And also an invite was sent to the parents and teachers on the district advisory council. So Hispanic outreach, youth outreach sent a kind of a large invitation list. Didn't have a lot of people, but we had a really robust conversation, and the parents who were there and the representatives of our community groups really were focusing on, what are we going to do to provide support for our struggling kids? Because it's not just one group of kids. It's not just a few kids. We have, just like every other school, we have some significant issues. So regardless of when we return to school, that group and administrators will be working together to see what we can do. So we kind of went through that process, before tonight's meeting. But I think we would need to do additional consultations as we better implement the plan.
Yeah, because I'm part of these two and I had no idea about this. So that's not getting a parent. Just because Phil's a representative doesn't mean that he got the parent consent. And then also what I'm having a really hard time
Jim
is,
I think Jim just got bumped off the meeting.
Jim just got bumped off and he called me. He's going to shut down his computer and restart, join the meeting.
Nikki, hold your thought.
We'll take another pause. I'm very sorry, Nikki.
no worries. Maybe I can go scarf some food in between then.
Jim, are you back on? Can you hear us? My mic will not work due to the size of the group. I can hear you. I definitely need you to be able to speak. Do we have a way for you to have your voice heard? Can you call in on a different line? Lisa, how can we help him?
Can he text in? I
If
mean,
he
message
would-
in?
On the invite that is emailed out, there is also a phone number. If he would like, he could call in and be able to speak through the phone connection.
All right, I think that's really important. It's his motion on the table, so I want him to be able to communicate with us verbally. Jim, just say hello when you're on and I will be able to resume then.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you. So glad you're there. Great.
Yeah.
All right.
It's size of the group that's kicking me out on the mic part, so
I'm so sorry.
that's not nobody's fault.
I know. Well, we paused again, so you did not miss a thing. Nikki was speaking and we asked her to hold her thoughts. So we'll pick right back up there if you're ready to go, Nikki.
Yep. My question is if these important stakeholders have had a voice and a ability to provide feedback, how come I, as two representatives on it, I had no idea about any of this? So that makes me think that, why aren't our teachers and our staff being considered in any of these plans? Why aren't they being brought to the table at the planning? This is where I have a really hard time, but that can just be something maybe we address in the future, how to do better, be better on making sure that all of our stakeholders, making sure that we uplift some, especially the ethnic voices who may or may not write in or know procedural policies and how to interact with us. That's why I've made it a point to get out in the community so that they see my faces. And so not always feeling comfortable emailing, they can always come to me or any other board member with their concerns and things like that. So like I said, that's not going to be a deciding factor for me right now, but I want to really see this district do better with the communication on the staff on the inside.
Or I'll add, I think you're thinking about staff and parents and students. I agree, Nikki.
Holly.
Thank you. So my hesitation and my thought around all of this is we are cramming all of these kids into one building, yet we have our elementary kids spaced out. And if we look at the research and if we look at the data, it's the kids that are older that are more susceptible to spreading it versus the little kids. It feels like it should be flipped upside down. Like, why do we still have the 7th grade in the high school? And I know I wasn't there for that vote, but especially if we're looking at putting kids back in person, why are we cramming all of these people in one space? I think about when I worked at the high school. We didn't even have 7th grade then. And it was like this all the time. You couldn't walk without bumping into somebody. So I don't know if that's been on the table, Carson. I don't know if you guys have discussed, you know, beyond the vote, like what would that look like? But this doesn't feel equitable to me because we've had the little people in school, but what we're hearing from the high school parents and the middle school parents is that their kids are struggling. They are bottoming out. They are, you know, where has that discussion been about making it more equitable for our higher grade level kids? That's, and if it takes too much work, it takes too much work, but all of this takes so much work. So I don't want that to be discounted as we're thinking about this, especially with so many things at stake. Yes, the parents have mentioned, you don't have to go back to school. It is 1000% your family's choice whether or not you want to send kids in person. But do we have coaches being offered vaccinations? Do we have club leaders being offered vaccinations? Do you know, those are all things where the kids are in contact with each other. And again, I don't understand why we're not flipping it and having more space for the bigger kids. And that's kind of all I have to say. My mind isn't made up yet, but I'm leaning in one way.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Holly, because you know, I can give a little context to it. I know the decision from last summer. First, we had the kind of the criteria or the expectation that we would serve our youngest learners first, and so that was a part of it. We moved 7th grade over to the high school because keeping 7th grade in a separate building or 5th, 6th, and 7th, or 6th and 7th would have been a really impossible task for transportation because we have that 50% transportation limit on buses. And so that's why we went to the 2-tier system. That's why we moved 7th grade over, you know, so all the tiered busing would work. And then the kind of another reason is that when you know, starting in 7th grade, we have the different teacher licensure requirements. And so it's not as easy as just saying, well, 7th grade is going to meet here because then we'd need to find a math teacher to work for 7th graders. Well, that wouldn't be full time. Or maybe we need just a little more than full time. And so it was some of those complicating factors that all went into it. So I would definitely want to, you know, if we could do this for everyone, you know, I'd be the first to sign up. I don't think it's just challenging. I think it's impossible to do for grades 7 through 12.
What do you think is impossible, Carson? I missed that part.
I think it'd be impossible to bring back 7th through 12th graders all in person with 6-foot social distancing. You know, we can do it with 3-foot social distancing, but I think it'd be impossible to do 6-foot social distancing when all the kids are back in school, just regardless of the grade configurations or, you know, anything like that.
Is it safe to say, though, that the elementary is still going to be 6 foot?
Yeah, for grades K through 5 or K through 6. Or I'm sorry, for grades K through 4, we're going to keep the current model, which has 6-foot social distancing in every elementary class. We talked about the possibility of maybe reducing 1 or 2 of those sections in order to provide resources elsewhere. The problem, though, is that then we're switching up student assignments in classrooms, you know, with only 3 or 4 months to go, and we didn't think that would be the way to go.
It's not, but we're also cramming in 900 kids into one space, so we may have to look at switching kids from classrooms if we're looking at the number one factor being safety. Is kind of, you know, where I'm coming from. To me, a shift in a classroom is a much different sacrifice than somebody's health in that context. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But thank you, Carson. I do hear you. And I hear everybody that's, emailing us in.
All right, Jennifer and then Arlen.
I have two questions. Are there options for staff that are at higher risk for, if they were to get COVID, are at higher risk for having more severe disease, and are not comfortable being in the high school under these circumstances? Do they have options right now of possibly doing online learning or something else? And then my second question is, in between, during the transition time where we only have 3 grade levels at the high school and the other 3 coming in, presumably 9, 10, 11, will those kids still be doing hybrid, or will they be online for those 2 weeks?
They would still be in hybrid for those 2 weeks. In terms of your first question about the high school staff, first of all, we're expecting to have vaccinations available, to all teachers, and so that should help a lot. And like Shonda said, you're supposed to have the 2 vaccinations and then 2 weeks before you're quote unquote fully immunized. I don't know if you're ever truly fully immunized. So I think that's a big issue that hopefully is being resolved because of the extra vaccinations. Also, we do have an accommodation process. So if there are teachers with specific concerns, like the ones you described, Jennifer, then they work with Sherry and Anna, or Sherry and Amy French to review what those options are. So I can't really say general we'll do this. We have to look at each case separately.
Thank you, Karsten and Jennifer. That was a good question. Arlen.
Thank you. First off, I will be voting no on the existing motion. And I think that's obvious from what I said before. One of my concerns with the proposal that was first put out to our board for tonight is 3 grades will not even get back in school until the middle of April. Because we have to have that I guess it would be April 19th would be what the proposal is for grades 8, 9, 10, and 11. I'm also hearing everybody talk about grade 6 and an online only teacher and hiring an additional one. I'm very supportive of the concept, but I think if we're going to do it, ideally it would be at the end of a quarter, although elementary maybe isn't that big a deal. And I don't even know if I like this idea, but I'm just going to throw it out. If this existing motion does not go through, would it make any sense to bring back grades 9, 10, and 11 2 weeks ahead of the end of the quarter, which would be March 22nd, and then bring back grades 5 and 6, all students, and give us time to get an online teacher for that on April 5th, and then our seniors. I did that wrong. Bring back grades 7, 8, and 12 in the middle of April, on April 20.
You mean March?
Middle of March. I'll try again. Bring back grades 7, 8, and 12 on March 22nd. That would help our senior experience to get as much time as they possibly can in the high school, and get the running start where we got 2 other grades in the high school. Then on April 5th, bring back grades 9, 10, and 11, and grades 5 and 6. And then I also think on the grades 5 and 6, if you could hire an online only teacher, we may have that in our existing staff for another online only teacher, where you would be able to hire possibly somebody would just take over an entire classroom for the in-person learning. There might even be somebody that has issues health-wise and wants to be distance learning. I don't know, but I'm just gonna throw this idea out. Get a running start on the high school one on April, 2 weeks ahead of the quarter, and then do the others on April 5th.
And Arlen, from what you described, I believe that would meet the expectations as outlined in the Safe Learning Plan. The big thing is the 2-week period. You know, so it's a rolling start at the high school. And what you just described would meet that.
Thanks for that suggestion, Arlen. Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I apologize for not being able to see me, but I am here. And the reason for my motion is it's been 11 months since COVID really kind of hit us back in the middle of March. And we're all taking precautions, but we're all not hunkered down at home. People are out and about. People are going around people. People are visiting people. People are probably traveling. People are going to stores. I get the concerns that people have, but during this whole time, parents are struggling, trying to find time to be with their children who aren't able to be home every day. They're working. Kids are home. You're hearing from different stories from parents. From some are getting a lot of back on the online thing, and some kids are not getting anything, and they're just begging and pleading and want the kids back as soon as possible. That's the reason for my motion. Arlen's motion is just the top of another an idea. The top of another motion is just pushing everything back another 2 weeks, which is an idea, good idea, as to if had the first one hadn't been presented. I hear loud and clear by a vast majority of people, they need their kids back and want their kids back now. The kids want to go back. The kids are hanging around other kids. They're doing whatever. So we need to come up with an answer. We need to make a decision and move on so parents aren't sitting on this line all night long figuring out what we're going to do. So I will be voting for the motion. I will not be voting for any other motion that prolongs bringing our kids back at a later date that is presented tonight on this original motion. Not that I don't want the kids to come back. It's just we need to bring them back sooner than later. And my motion brings them back sooner than later. Thank you.
And I'll just piggyback on what Jim said. He and I had a conversation earlier today with the superintendent, and we were kind of discussing, fears. And I think our parents have been speaking loud and clear. There's a petition that we've all received today with 126 parents listed on there begging for us to get, and I will say that word, begging. I mean, we've heard loud and clear from our constituents, people who have voted us to make these decisions, that they need, it's not even it's a need, it's not a want, it's a need to get their children back into a regular, predictable schedule. And then Rhodey was here today representing 50 families. I think our constituents are speaking to us loudly and clearly on what it is that our community needs right now. And I think we also need to be, not once in our conversation have we talked tonight about the needs of our students. That needs to be at the front and center of what we're discussing here tonight. Our students, we all know that our students thrive much better in an environment where we can teach safely and in person. I don't know a whole lot of students out there who are thriving in this hybrid situation or distance learning. I'm sure there are several out there that are, but the vast majority are not. School isn't the end all be all for all of our students, but I think if we look at the original proposed timeline of April 19th, getting grades 9, 10, and 11 back, that's more than 2 months from now. Another 8 weeks of kids flailing, families flailing out here trying to make this Band-Aid work the best they can. And so I could compromise on Arlen's suggestion, But I agree with Jim. I think we need to act sooner rather than later. I want our teachers to have and our staff to have as much time as they can to prepare. But I think that it can be done. We've all been doing hard jobs right now and doing things that we never thought we'd have to do in this pandemic. But I think this proposal tonight outlines ways that we can get our kids back full-time as safely as possible. I think if we look at the science and remember what the science says, the science has very little evidence of schools contributing meaningfully to the spread of COVID-19. The World Health Organization has said 3 feet is safe, as did the director of the CDC. So I know that we're worried about going from 6 feet to 3 feet, but it will be okay. It will be safe. Can I ever guarantee that we were not going to have a spread in the school? Absolutely not. Nobody can predict that. But I think our district has done an amazing job of being able to provide as safe of a place of education as we possibly can. And we need to keep the needs of the students first. What are their needs right now? And I think the answer is that they need to get back to school. They would tell you that. Holly.
I'm going to say this as gently as possible, but I feel like you're lecturing us based on your want. And when we ask questions to Shonda and Karsten, we're listening that more time is necessary and that, you know, things can happen, but it's going to take time to get things. And I'm not upset, but I do feel that you're lecturing. That's a me personal thing. And it's kind of like overboard. There's a lot on the table and there are a lot of things that we don't know, and we haven't heard from all parents. Karsten said that. We've heard from a group of parents, and that's fantastic. I applaud their wanting to come out and say things, but we have not heard from all of them. And so to say we've heard from the parents is not a true statement. We've heard from a group of parents who are highly committed to their children. I don't discount that. But I really I struggle with that overrun of being told that we've heard from the parents. So I just wanted to put that out there, trying to be as gentle as possible, Pam. Not trying to argue with you, but it's a lot.
Well, I believe that a discussion is about sharing your thoughts and opinions. So that's what this is about. Jennifer.
I just wanted to say that I believe that every one of us here has the best interest of the students in mind. We all want the kids to be able to go back to school. We want that to be able to be done safely for the students and for the staff. And I think everyone needs to be aware that the questions we're asking are just to be sure that all safety measures are put into place. In my job, I deal with kids that are most at risk of a variety of different issues every day. And I see what's happening, and they need to be back in school. I see that. I know that personally. And our teachers know that, but our teachers and our staff also have a lot of concerns and questions. And I do believe that it's our job to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for them, also for the students, obviously, but we also need to make sure that the workplace that they are in is safe. We also need to make sure that the staff has enough time to prepare so that we can provide the education that our families are asking for, so that we can make sure that all the students are safe. But yes, number one for every single one of us is that we want the students to be back in the high school. Our students need to be there. Our 5th and 6th graders need to be back with their teachers. I was helping my daughters register before this meeting started, and it was amazing to see the joy on their faces as they were planning next school year, because there was the hope that they could be back in the building with their classmates and their teachers. And I think we need to provide that for them this school year if we can, but we just need to do it carefully. So I appreciate this discussion and the thoughtfulness from everyone.
And Nikki.
I agree with Holly and Jennifer 100% because again, like I said, I could be advocating for these voiceless groups and people all day long, especially the Native American Committee, which has been active since 1988. And a lot of things have gone under radar. We can go to that route or not, but we want to make sure that we're including all stakeholders' voices, you know, not just these ones that are emailing us and vocalizing their concerns in other ways that the other groups are not.
All right, so I think that we've had a really long, lively discussion about this. The motion on the table is the proposed timeline that the proposal was made by Jim, seconded by, or the motion was made by Jim, seconded by Pam to bring students back on March 8th and March 22nd, with the 5th grade going 5 days a week, and the others going 4+1 learning model. Any other discussion on this motion? All right, we will begin then with a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Derricks.
No.
Ms. Astendorf,
No.
Ms. Tower,
No.
Ms. Tift,
No.
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Ms. Buck,
No.
and chair votes yes. So that fails 2-5. All right, would somebody like to make a different motion about our return to school transition plan?
Can I make a motion of Arlen's plan? Even though I didn't come up with the plan?
You absolutely can.
Okay. Let's see if I can word this right. I, Nikki Buck, make a motion to move forward with Arlen's plan with getting 7, 8, and 12 in by March 22nd, and then allowing the 2-week period for the rest of the grades to follow. 4 days with the Wednesday allowed for the teacher prepping.
The 4+1 plan, yes. Motion. So March 22nd for grades 5 days a week, right? 7, 8, and 12. And then April 5th, 9, 10, 11. With 6th grade also being April 5th, right? So basically what's in the proposed timeline, except the dates, would be March 22nd and April 5th. Do I have a second on that motion?
Anna will second.
Any other discussion?
Just to clarify, 6th grade would come in on April 5th. What about 5th grade?
I think it'd be students in grades 5 and 6 for March 22nd, and students in 7, 8, and 12 with the 4+1 learning model.
I think
So-
it was 5th and 6th on April 5th, so that there's time to hire a distance learning teacher, correct?
Oh, yes. My apologies. March 22nd would be 7, 8, and 12. April 5th would be 9, 10, 11, and then grades 5 and 6, with 5 being all day, every day. All
And then
day,
I
4+1.
assume it would be, if we could find another online teacher, that we would do our best to get 6th grade in that
Awesome.
5-day model.
Or possibly move a teacher in and have a sub in a different capacity.
Right.
Just wanted to throw that in there so that it's not, oh, we have to hire a sub.
All right. The motion on the floor made by Nikki, seconded by Anna. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair? This
Yes.
is Jim. It's great that our kids are going back, but I cannot support it because we're talking 4 to 6 weeks from tonight that the kids will be going back, and I think we could have gotten them back sooner. So, not that I don't want kids back in school, that's not it. I just think we missed an opportunity tonight to bring them back sooner than later. So I will be voting no for the motion. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Starting with Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
No.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
No.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. That passes 1, 2, 3, 5 to 2. So March 22nd and April 5th it is. Thank you everyone for that very lively discussion. I think the bottom line is, Jennifer, you said it extremely well, that we want everyone to get back to school as safely and as quickly as possible with those two things in mind. So thank you. All right, moving on then to school board reports. Finance Committee, any updates to share this evening? Any updates from Finance?
It's you, Holly. You're the chair.
Yes, I'm sorry. We meet on next Monday. And so we will have all kinds of updates and we will have all kinds of things to share with you. Arlen mentioned at our last board meeting that he was disappointed that there were a couple things that were brought up. Arlen, I was disappointed in your tone, but I hear you loud and clear. And so I will make sure that we address those things that you brought up.
All right, Operations Committee, any updates there?
Well, Madam Chair, we reported at the last meeting on the 1st, and we meet again on, not positive for meeting on the 1st or on the 8th. You have to double check that, but we'll meet prior to the next board meeting, I presume. So.
All righty. Personnel Committee, you will see an MOU later on in our agenda. We've been working with the food service in negotiations, and I'll let Carson explain that to you later on in the agenda. Otherwise, nothing new from Personnel Committee. Legislative and Policy Committee.
Yeah, we met tonight, got our first chance to get together and get acquainted with what the committee does, and we reviewed some policies or ideas for discussion here at our board meeting or our workshop here next week here. I believe it was on school board procedures and such. So otherwise there was not really formally gone too far on that. Sometime before we're done with our reports committee notes, probably at the end, once you get through the committees, I'd like to make a comment that I asked you about earlier today.
Anything else, Arlen, or anybody on that committee? Any other committees that anyone would like to report on at this time?
This is Anna. I should have mentioned it at our last meeting because we met immediately before the board meeting, but just was discombobulated. The equity team has been working through, there is an equity self-assessment and implementation guide. So we've been looking through that and kind of highlighting the things that that group feels are kind of the highest priority, or the things that the district has already been making good progress on. So that work will continue in our March meeting, and then, you know, hopefully probably April, have some recommendations to bring forward to the rest of the board.
Okay, awesome. Any other committees?
For the district advisory committee, just an update about the flight paths. Last time we had talked about need for more communication in the community and for families about flight paths. And I know that Mick and Jess have been working on creating both a video to go out to the community. Also, Mick is working with HR departments for the businesses that we are working with, and so that they can communicate with their staff and with the rest of the community on our behalf about the Flight Pass program. And then also there was a video that did go out with registration this week at the high school, explaining a little bit more about Flight Paths.
Great, Mary. Thank you. Any other committees? GCED, is there any updates there, Holly? Nothing?
Nope, not since our last meeting.
Okay. Anything else that I've missed?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a school board member report here, if I may, at this point.
Sure.
I'm very alarmed of what I've seen of a lack of enforcement of our mask policy. It's not only our school district's mask policy, it's Minnesota's requirement to wear masks and the way they should be worn inside buildings, and Minnesota State High School League's mask policy. I had a series of emails with Paul Hartman after reviewing a picture I saw in the Republican Eagle of our basketball player, one of our players, with a mask below the nose, and two of our opponents with their masks worn the same way. And I discussed at length with them about who's responsible. There is a policy from the State High School League that says that it's up to the officials. There's also our coaches can stop the game to fix it. Our administration can stop the game to fix the mask problem. I was told that it had been stopped a few times during the game. And I said, well, I'm glad to hear that, but we got an issue, we got a trend that's going on. Since that time, I noticed watching TV and the news, the same thing is going on with basketball players, State High School League basketball games, where the players are not wearing masks over their nose, and apparently they're looking the other way. I also saw a picture in the Republican Eagle of the gymnastics and a participant, and I'm quite sure that they are required to wear masks while they're competing. I may be wrong, but there was no mask on at all. And then I read some stuff in the Rochester Post Bulletin about an official at the basketball game, and the official didn't wear a mask. Now, we got mask policies from one end to the other, and I don't want to be the mask police. But a policy by the State High School League should be enforced by the State High School League, and if they can't get a handle on it, they better figure out how to put technical fouls in basketball, or they better figure out other penalties so people get it through. It's required by the state of Minnesota, if you're indoors, to wear a mask. And we have the same policy in our buildings. We adopted our own mask policy here. Regardless of what the state or the high school league does, people are to wear masks, and they're to wear them properly in our buildings. And it's not being done. And I'm very alarmed at it. I'm very upset that we are not getting it taken care of. I'm not asking for action from anybody here at this meeting tonight. I'm making everybody aware of it. I told everybody when we passed our mask policy that if people didn't wear masks, they're going to hear my wrath. Well, you got it tonight. We have an issue, a trend in our activities, our athletics, where masks are not worn properly and we're looking the other way. And if we're going to continue to do that, my opinion is we're going to have issues. But if we're not going to force it, let's get rid of the mask policy. Let's just let everybody do what they're doing. It's just ridiculous to have a policy. 3 different places have policies and nobody's enforcing it. So why do we even have it? Hopefully somebody will start stepping up and doing something. I think we as an obligation in our own district, regardless of what happens anywhere else, if opponents come in our building and they don't wear the mask right, we can ask them to leave. Let's take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlen.
I'm just curious, Arlen, did Paul have anything that would be important to share at this moment?
Well, he said it's an issue and they talk about it every week at the high school league. He said that play was stopped during the game and people made mask adjustments during the game. I don't know, I wasn't there, but I just know when I see pictures, and I'm not pointing it out here only in our district. I'm pointing it out. This is a trend throughout I'm assuming throughout the state. Go watch the sports highlights for high school basketball or different events on TV. You're going to see the same thing. It's not just here. It's not a Red Wing issue. But we have an obligation in Red Wing to enforce our own policies. That's what I'm saying. But the rest of it needs to be addressed other places or just throw the rules away because it's ridiculous to have a rule if it's not enforced.
Thank you, Arlen. And just to be clear, you're talking specifically about sports. This isn't an activities or a classroom issue.
Well, what I saw was activities or athletics. And I'm seeing it not here. I'm seeing a trend everywhere.
Sure.
But I don't know what the rest is. I'm not the mask police. I'm not walking down the hall to see if we have an issue in our building with our students during the school day. I'm not saying that I saw any of that. I'm saying I see a trend developing where people are looking the other way. And it's going on in activities. If it's going to go there, it's probably going to follow the other places too.
Okay. I assume Superintendent Anderson will follow up and see what more we can find out. Thank you for bringing that up, Arlen. All right, and administrative reports.
I'll just highlight two of the items that are listed in the report. First, I believe Anna highlighted the activities through Black History Month of February. So you can see a little more detail in the administrative reports. We have a lot of work to do, not only with Black history, but with Indigenous people, with Hispanic culture. We have a lot of work to do in those areas. And we're committed to making things better. And then I'll highlight the notice that I received from the state that we are now eligible to be part of the Achievement and Integration Program through the state. It could generate about $270,000 in yearly revenue that could be used to help encourage integration of people in not only Red Wing, but also our neighboring school districts. So I do not know a lot about the program, but I know of people who really rely on that program to do some great things for kids. So we're going to start looking into that. And our first step will be to talk to Prairie Island Indian community, as well as the Native American Parent Committee. Obviously we have a lot of groups to work with, but when you use the word integration, because of the sad past of forced integration for decades or centuries, we want to start with Prairie Island and our Native American Parent Committee to see if it's the right thing to pursue. So that's all I have. You can read the rest of the report at your leisure.
Thank you, Superintendent Anderson. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is in your board packet. Anybody have anything they need or would like to pull from the consent agenda? All right, then I'm looking for a motion to pass the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Holly,
Anna will second.
seconded by Anna. Any other discussion? We'll take a roll call vote then, starting with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
and chair votes aye, passes 7-0. Resolutions accepting donations and grants. Superintendent Andrews.
I'll make a motion to approve the donations and grants as submitted tonight. And thank you to the Holbrook family.
All
I
right,
will second that.
motion made by Jim. Seconded by, was that you, Jennifer? I'm sorry. Seconded by Jennifer. We've got 2 donations. One is anonymous for Jefferson Teachers Classroom Supplies of $200 and the David Holbert Memorial, $610 for Wingers Activities Community Project. As always, we thank you for those wonderful, thoughtful donations, and it means a lot. Motion made by Jim, seconded by Jennifer. We'll take a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. That passes 7-0. And again, thank you. All right, the employee handbook attachments.
Yeah, we have 2 attachments that belong with the employee handbook. One is an updated organizational chart that's more visual, at least it's visual from my perspective. And then also the employee reporting responsibility for inclement weather or other emergencies. Personnel committee reviewed both documents.
This is Anna. I will make a motion to approve the organizational chart and employee reporting responsibilities as attachments to the employee handbook.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Anna and Holly. Motion made by Anna, seconded by Holly. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Buck, we'll start the roll call vote with you.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. That passes 7-0. Next is the MOU for food service.
Yep, after a negotiation session with our Cooks Association, the negotiations committee concluded that it would be the right thing to do to increase the uniform allowance as a one-time increase for this year. As you know, of course, food service workers are assigned to work indoors, and this year they're spending significant time outdoors. And so the MOU is recommended for approval as a one-time increase.
I will make the motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Cooks Association.
Motion made by Jennifer,
Anna will second.
seconded by Anna. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll start the roll call vote with Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
chair votes aye. That passes 7-0. Thank you. Sunnyside Kitchen Wall Repair Project.
Yeah, the operations committee reviewed this project, but Kevin will just give a brief synopsis of the project as well as the bids.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, the project in question is a wall that abuts the freezer out at Sunnyside Elementary School. This was part of our maintenance referendum projects. Our engineer felt we could insulate the wall and be good enough. It would stop the sweating of the wall and issues that we're having. So we did try that to save some money. It partially held, but we still are having the issue. So what this is for is to cut the floor, cement floor under the freezer. There is no thermal barrier between the freezer and the kitchen floor. Obviously, when it's below zero and it's humid in the room, it sweats, and then that is detrimental to the wall itself, let alone that we're constantly cleaning it to make sure that we don't end up with any mold or four-letter word like that on the wall. So we went out for bid. It is in the minutes, but I'm going to put this up for the public to see. Share that. Hopefully everybody can see that now. We went out for bid on Friday the 22nd, or opened the bids on Friday the 22nd. We had two local bidders, or not local. One was from Faribault Metcon Construction for $42,900, and Red Wing Construction, the local company, for $30,696. Once again, these funds would be or are allocated from our referendum, so the money is still there for that. So we would be recommending the board to approve Red Wing Construction for a local contractor again for the $30,696. We are late due to that good bid. We were able to lower our budget from $54,947 down to $41,383.20, a savings of 13 some thousand. So with that, I'll open it up for questions if you have any.
Does anyone have any questions for Kevin about this Sunnyside kitchen wall repairs?
Jim makes a motion to approve.
All right, to approve the bid for Red Wing Construction, the amount of $30,696 for the Sunnyside kitchen wall repair project. Motion made by Jim. Do I have a second?
Jennifer will second. Oh.
Arm wrestle for it? I'll give it to Jennifer. I saw her hand up. Sorry, Anna. You get the next one. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will start the roll call vote with Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye, passes 7-0. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you all.
All right, teacher seniority list.
Each year we adopt a teacher seniority list. So this year, Amy French, Sherry Johnson, and Lisa Stigurda spent considerable time updating this particular seniority list. So I'd like to thank them as well as representatives from Education Minnesota who developed it. Also, Education Minnesota sent out a message to teachers looking for challenges or changes to the list. And so we've addressed each one of those.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve this teacher seniority list as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Holly. Do I have a second?
Anna, second.
Motion made by Holly, seconded by Anna. Any other discussion? We will take a roll call vote, this time starting with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That passes 7-0. Thank you. All right. Well, we are down to upcoming meetings and future topics.
Pam, we added one agenda item.
Oh,
It
you're
has
right.
to do with
That's
in-person
right.
meetings.
Thank you. Thank you. In-person board meetings. Yes. How could I forget that?
Yeah, this was just added today, and so that's why there's a late notice and there isn't background information. As you recall, last March, we approved a resolution that enabled us to provide virtual meetings, and this discussion came up because if we're expecting our students and teachers to be in person, then we ought to at least consider having our board meetings in person as well. So I think the recommendation, if I recall correctly, would be to begin in-person and or hybrid meetings on March 8th. Is that correct, Pam?
I thought we talked about the 15th.
Oh, maybe it was the 15th. I can't remember. Yeah.
Either of those, I think, would work. I think today we were talking and aligning with when the students were coming back.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you talked about the hybrid, meaning that if for any reason a school board member could not attend because of health reasons, then we're going to work on making sure that we have the proper equipment so that everybody can see each other on a screen if you're not able to be there. And then we're going to continue live streaming this so that the public can always be there in attendance through a virtual means. The other piece is if people want to come physically for public comment, we will probably need a cap on that. But usually, I think in an impassioned time, I don't think we've ever had more than 5 or 6 people come. So they would have to, get that okayed ahead of time to come in for public comment. But we'd want to make sure that people had that option to be there for public comment. We'd also want a member of the paper to be present as well for reporting and recording purposes. But of course, we still live stream it. Holly, I see your name in the queue.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up a quick point. I have no problem with the hybrid option for people to call in, Zoom in, or whatever they need to do. The one point I do want to bring up is some of us are not carried by the insurance of the district. So that the argument that, well, they have to go back, we should have to go back. To me, logically, it's because, everybody is under the insurance of the district. That's a different entity than some people who may not have health insurance or who may have a limited plan. So that argument doesn't weigh out to me anymore. It took me a while to figure that out, but that's all I wanted to bring up. But other than that, I'm fine with the hybrid option.
Any other discussion? Would someone like to make a motion that we move to, should we put a date out there? We have a board meeting on March 15th and we have a workshop on the 22nd. I'm good with either of those dates. If somebody wanted to make a motion to work on that in-person / hybrid back to meeting model.
This is Anna. I will make a motion that we use a hybrid model for the 22nd and potentially moving forward.
Okay.
I will second that, Jennifer.
March 22nd. Hybrid starting March 22nd and moving forward. All right. Motion made by Anna, seconded by Jennifer. Any other discussion?
I think the actual motion that Anna made would be and possibly moving forward.
And possibly? Okay, thank you.
Arlen's in the queue.
Arlen.
Yeah, I've been in the queue and raised my hand. You didn't see me, but it doesn't really matter too much. I was just going to say I'm not going to vote in favor of doing this at this time, and that was before the motion. The motion's here. I'll just do my vote. You guys can do what you're going to do.
The date is still up in the air, but I believe that we were looking at the middle school cafeteria. But
Possibly.
to be determined because we do have a couple of things that we need to figure out in terms of accessibility and usage of the building at that time during those times of meetings. So we need to just clarify, but stay tuned. We'll be able to let you know as soon as we can figure all that out, and Karsten will work on that. All right, so motion on the table is to move to a hybrid model of School board meetings starting on March 22nd and possibly moving forward. And, you know, this would be something we can further discuss at our workshop next Monday too. Any other discussion? All right, we'll start.
There's
Ann-
two
Anna's in the
people in the
queue.
queue.
Nikki, thank you guys for keeping me honest. I wish it would ding when somebody put a new name in there. Nikki, sorry about that.
I think Anna was before me.
Oh my goodness, you're right. Anna, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, the reason that I said, you know, possibly moving forward, I think, you know, we want to make sure that this isn't creating an undue burden on the district and, you know, the necessary cleaning and setup and all of that stuff that comes into play with having us in person. But I would like to try it and see, you know, what kind of issues arise, and then we can, you know, figure out how to address them from there. So that was why I said the 22nd, and then, you know, potentially moving forward.
Really thoughtful, thank you. We have addressed that a little bit in our weekly meetings. And we would really love to have it at the high school because there are more custodians that are able to help with setting up and taking down and cleaning. We just don't know if there's a space available that wouldn't conflict with other groups going on. And so that's part of our research happening right now. Nikki, sorry about that.
I like that idea because, but I like the points that Holly made that were not considered the same. I'm really interested in how an in-person meeting is going to go with mask and the communication barrier and things like that. But I'm all forward with, you know, setting a date and moving forward and kind of seeing what works for us, because we do have to move forward and think of a new, we don't want to call it normal, just a new way of life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Holly.
Yes, Nikki, that's what I was going to say. We have to wear masks. It's my understanding, right, Karsten?
Yeah.
So with a mask on, we can talk clearly, and it's not an issue that we have to wear a mask. It just might not come across as clear, or it might be cumbersome for people to understand. But I was just going to say that's my only caveat, is that we have to be masked up. And for some people that read lips, or some people that's, you know, do it differently, we might have to put closed captions on so that people can have access.
Yeah, I'd never thought of that, Holly. You know, because right now with the digital ones, you know, we don't need to wear masks.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Really good consideration. I'm one that actually does rely a little bit on facial expressions and lip reading a little bit when I can't always hear. Jim.
The fact that I'm on my phone, and I don't think it's the reason, but I must have hit caption because I can see everybody on my screen, can hear you, but I can read exactly words, what you say come up on a caption level, so that is available.
Oh.
You don't get the exact words, maybe there's a kind of a slight twist on some of them, like Karsten is Carson, so it's available for people on the caption level. Just wanted to mention that.
Good to know. I had no idea. That's awesome. All right. So the motion on the table was made by Anna, seconded by Jennifer, to start a hybrid in-person meeting on March 22nd and possibly moving forward. We'll start the roll call vote with Ms. Tift.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
No.
Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That passes 6-1. Thank you. We'll work on that and let you know where we'll be meeting on that evening. All right, future topics and upcoming meetings. We are working on our calendars, and they have been added into the board book. Thank you very much to Lisa Stigurda for putting some really nice color-coded meeting calendars together. So hopefully those will be easy for you to decipher and read so that you can see that. We've got our workshop coming up next Monday. Other meetings coming up this week. Do we want to highlight? They are in the board book for your viewing pleasure. All right.
Pam, just one question about that. Would it be possible to put the committee calendar, the district committee calendar, also in the board book, not just the school
Yes.
board ones? That
Yep,
would be
I
great.
just asked for that today, and so we will be adding that as a add-on from this meeting forward. Yeah, I asked for that same thing. I thought that would be helpful to put that in there because there's a lot of us on a lot of those committees, so it'd be nice to have like all of our meetings in one centralized location for us to continue viewing, because it does get to be a lot, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, last agenda item is to adjourn. I'm looking for motion.
So moved.
Made by Jim. Do I have a second?
Second,
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Holly. We'll start the roll call vote with Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. We are at 7-0. We are adjourned at 8:21. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.